Ladies and gentlemen, please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alderman King. Alderman Stone.
Here.
Alderman Tripp.
Here.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Here.
Alderman Cassetti.
Here.
Alderman Philippone.
Here.
Alderman Dempsey. Alderman Kaslitis.
Here.
Alderman Yalman.
Here.
Alderman Rivers.
Here.
Alderman O'Brien. Alderman Short.
Here.
Alderman Blackwell. 9 present, 4 absent, and 1 vacancy. Oh, is he here? Okay, 10 present, 3 absent, 1 vacancy.
Declare a quorum. Consideration of previous minutes, February 12th regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion.
Mr. Cassetti, second by Mr. Rivers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of February 26th special meeting.
Make a motion.
Mr. Cassetti, so moved. Mr. Rivers, seconded. Any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We also ask for a motion for the March 4th special meeting minutes.
What's that?
Mr. Cassetti and Mr. Rivers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Public session. Would anyone from the public wish to speak? Would anyone from the public wish to speak? Would anyone from the public wish to speak tonight? Yes, please come forward, please. Name and address for the record.
Frederick Pikorowski, 216 Derby Avenue, Connecticut. I live over right on 115. Sorry. Just got to catch my breath here. But I came here today just to say that, and to ask that we all oppose the tolls. I live on Derby Avenue, Derby, which is Route 115, and Route 115 is your main street. And the reason I'm saying we must oppose the tolls is because Route 115 is frequently used as an alternative to Route 8. And if the tolls go into proposed locations right around Seymour and north of Seymour and south of Seymour, your main street here is going to become a parking lot by day and a speedway by night, because people are going to try to make this, make around the same time that they do on Route 8, on Route 115, as to save themselves anywhere from $40 to $1.60 in tolls, depending on which plan they decide to implement. So it's not enough to just tell our representatives to say no, because the way the bill is written, it goes in by default if they don't vote on it. So they can all look at us and say, well, we didn't vote on the bill, but the honest reality of the way the law is written, we must ask them to actively oppose this law. Otherwise, it just goes in, and they can say, well, I didn't vote for it. But the way, like I said, the way the law is written, it goes in by default, and they can honestly say we didn't vote on it, but we need to take action. We need to tell them, get up and say no. Otherwise, Main Street is going to become an inconvenience by day and a hazard by night. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Please come forward.
Hey, Ramsey, 21 Castellan. First of all, I'd like to say Chief Andy Cota is doing an excellent job. If there's a problem, he'll come out and do one-on-one to you. I'd like to get no littering signs put up over here in Ansonia. They got them in Derby, they got them in Shelton. All right, and then get up some signs for no tractor trailers on these side streets, because I understand that they can't put tickets on the trailers. They have to give it to the driver. Liberty Street, High Street, they've been parking tractor trailers there, and Division Street over by Cumberland Farms. The water company fixed it, and there's a big dump there in the road. because somebody asked me to bring this up. Over by Cumberland Farms by the fire hydrant. It's sunk there.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Would anyone else from the public wish to speak tonight? Please come forward.
Stephen Erlinghauser, 6 Hill Drive. And I'd like to just make a comment on the first speaker's mentioned to reject tolls. The way the bills are currently before the General Assembly that are in, they only place them on 4 main highways, which are I-84, I-95, I-91, and portions of Route 15. But it doesn't appear to be going to the extent of a proposal released in November on the released in November by the Department of Transportation that will place them like on every highway. So the Department of Transportation proposal was a bit overzealous, and while I do think the current proposals are just a bit too overzealous as well, it doesn't go as far as requiring tolls on Route 8 as far as I'm aware. But, thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? One second. Would anyone else from the public besides this gentleman wish to speak? Okay, sir, please come forward.
Okay, well, now that I actually have breath, Fred Pikrowski, 216 Derby Avenue. The proposal I have has tolls on Route 8. There's been talk about not putting them only on the interstate. But the other simple fact that Ms. Clarity has told me personally that even if they did put a lockbox in, that the lockbox would not prevent this current way they're rating the transportation fund. So giving the state more money through tolls, in my opinion, is like giving a crack addict $20 and saying, have fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Anyone from the public? Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Hearing none, seeing none, public session is closed. Public official session. Mayor Paccetti, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, President Vaccaro, members of the Board of Aldermen, and residents of the great city of Ansonia. Let me begin by asking everyone to please stand for a moment of silence for our friend and fellow Alderman Frank DeLibero, who was laid to rest last month. We will miss him. I also ask that you remain standing for a moment of silence for Jeffrey Hunt, the son of former Alderwoman Denise Hunt. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the entire Hunt family. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a man who really needs no introduction. His name is David Geloso, but many of you know him as just Doc. For years, Doc has served this city and its residents at arms, Ansonia Rescue Medical. I don't know of a more dedicated public servant, and with Doc, we can always be assured that arms is in good hands. Doc is a kind, hard-working individual, and anyone who knows him would agree he truly cares about this community. He has years of experience and is always the first one to offer help and give advice. We are so proud of Doc and the service he provides to our community. So tonight, I would like to honor Doc and his service by reading a special proclamation. Doc, please come forward. Where are you? Oh my God. I got to put my glasses on because this is 3 font. David H. Doc Geloso. Whereas David H. Geloso applied and was sworn into the Ansonia Office of Civil Defense on October 20th, 1969. having now served 50 years of dedicated continual service to the city of Ansonia. And whereas David Geloso is more commonly known in the EMS community as Doc, and whereas Doc obtained his emergency medical technician ambulance on October 30th, 1972 from Housatonic Community College, and whereas Doc has positively affected countless individuals, survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, including receiving numerous accommodations dating back as far as August 24th, 1974, where he was recognized by the late Mayor Michael J. Adante for life-saving efforts at Abe Stone Park. And whereas Doc has served in nearly all leadership roles at Ansonia Civil Defense and Arms throughout his career, including lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, intern chief, and for what he is most well known for as Car 35, as the chief driver, completing national certification courses in the maintenance of emergency vehicles. And whereas Doc does not limit aid to only people, he has specified, procured, maintained, and mastered nearly every vehicle in the organization during his tenure. And whereas Doc was instrumental in the design and procurement of Operation of Rescue 4, that's a 1988 air and light truck still in service today that is dedicated in his name. And whereas Doc recently successfully passed his EMT certification exam, which will enable him to continue to serve the community and mentor members of arms for many years to come. And now, therefore, I, David S. Cassetti, Mayor of the City of Ansonia, in recognition of your service, do hereby proclaim March 12, 2019 as David Doc Geloso Day in recognition of your 50 years of service to the City of Ansonia. David.
Doc, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, Doc. But I appreciate it, and what can I say?
Well deserved. Well deserved. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been over 5 years since I was first sworn in to office as mayor of the great city of Ansonia. And I knew from the beginning that there would be challenges, but I also knew that when our Ansonia community stands together, there is no obstacle that cannot be overcome. And that is precisely what has fueled every accomplishment, every new business development, and every positive improvement we have made in the past 5 years. A community of 18,900 people that has resolved to put aside its differences and charge forward together. Looking for proof? Just consider that tonight, this board is taking up the placement of the Martin Luther King Jr. bust at Ansonia City Hall. It is an occasion made possible by the cooperation and collaboration of the Martin Luther King committee members, including Reverend L. Smith, our Ansonia Veterans Committee, and the Ansonia Fire Department. Together, these groups work to select an ideal location on city grounds for the bust, a rendering of which is contained in your packages tonight. A symbol of racial and social equality, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the type of leader that we should all strive to be. I am ecstatic to know his face will meet visitors at the doors of Ansonia City Hall now and for generations to come. Dr. King understood that understanding and love were the key to moving forward as a nation. And those same words ring true today, both in our country and in our community here in Ansonia. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." I have decided to stick to love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Here in Ansonia, we too will choose love over hate because we are far stronger together than apart. That is why I also want to recognize both the Board of Aldermen and the Board of Education for finalizing a settlement of a year-long lawsuit in the manner that both addresses budgetary concerns and issues of financial transparency. As a result of this settlement, the city will no longer be budgeting in the dark. Moreover, we will be building a bridge to further cooperation and collaboration with the Board of Education in the form of a shared financial software platform. Together, the city and Board of Education can achieve more for students, teachers, and all residents. Though we may not always agree, I salute both sides for working together in good faith for the betterment of Ansonia. On another note, I would like to recognize Alderman Charlie Stowe for speaking up on behalf of our residents and ensuring that the Water Pollution Control Authority pays for the work done to pipes that go to their plant. The WPCA has done a great job of saving money, passing those savings on to our taxpayers in reduced rates. I am very happy that the WPCA board stepped up to the plate and will pay for costs associated with the sewer pipe collapse on Pershing Drive. When departments work together and share resources, the taxpayers come out on top. That also holds true when our valley communities work together. That's why I am pleased to report that we are continuing to work with the City of Derby in an effort to consolidate services, improve on those services, and save money in the process. With your approval, we will be entering into an agreement to share the cost and maintenance of our fuel pumps for Public Works and the Police Department gas consumption. Derby will pay 50% of the costs associated with the gas pumps and will help to share in the maintenance of the pumps. Finally, I want to mention that it is once again budget time in Ansonia. And if there was ever a time for the city to come together and work hard for our residents and taxpayers, this is it. And it should go without saying that my goal, once again, is to achieve a budget that will not increase the mill rate on our taxpayers. As you know, our tremendous comptroller, Rich Bashura, has moved into a part-time position and will require some assistance during the budget season. That's why I have engaged the services of First Selectman Kurt Miller to provide budget consulting services on a temporary basis during the budget process. Mr. Miller will be assisting with the review of department budgets and also providing my office with recommendations on policy and procedures, all with the goal of increasing efficiency and effectiveness for our residents. Many of you know that Mr. Miller ran for comptroller in the state of Connecticut, where he would have done an amazing job. Well, Hartford's loss is Ansonia's gain this year. Now let's continue our work together for the great city of Ansonia. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Any questions for the mayor from the alderman? Mr. Marine Corporation Counsel?
President Vaccaro, members of the board, I want to let you know that police union negotiations are still ongoing. Also, we continue to work on updates to our personnel policy, and I'm looking to have a meeting on that held over the next couple weeks to tighten up some last details. We also have a need for an ordinance committee meeting to finalize a couple items, including a parking situation over near the hospital, near the Derby line. The sooner that ordinance committee meeting can be done, the sooner we can move forward. I've also worked this month to draft an agreement with Derby to share fuel pump services, as the mayor mentioned, and also a resolution authorizing this board and the city to adopt powers under the City and Town Development Act, as we discussed in the public hearing. So I can certainly take any questions relative to those two matters that weren't already resolved, or anything else. And I would also say, snow and ice, I think we had a lot of great compliance to our new laws that were passed just recently, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Yet there are some weak spots in some of the wards. Our aldermen, I think, are doing a good job reporting that, both to the Building and Blight Committee and also to the police. But of course, the more communication, the better. The more they know, the more eyes there are in these issues, the more they can determine what the most effective enforcement method is. And of course, for the residents' knowledge, of course, no one wants to issue a fine. The city does not take any satisfaction at all in having to fine its residents. What we're looking for is simply compliance, and that's because it is simply not safe to have main sidewalks in residential or commercial areas covered with snow and ice. And of course, in turn, our Public Works Department works very hard to cover our own territory and also help out in areas where the city doesn't own property, like around the Copper and Brass SHW facility, but at the same time you have property owners that are very, very, should we say, not responsible for their own property, and we have to pitch in and help out with that extra territory as well. But the more reports that come in, that's not a nuisance, that is in fact exactly what we need to get to those problem areas.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Marini, from the alderman? Thank you, John. Sheila O'Malley, Economic Development Director.
Thank you, President Vaccaro, members of the Board of Aldermen. A few things to report. So on Main Street, in the 65 Main Street with that project, the company that was removing the furniture has completed the removal of the furniture on all levels in 65 Main Street, and the PD Building Committee has authorized the vendor to go into the ivy-covered building for no cost. The vendor will remove all of the furniture and debris in that building as well. And they plan on also removing the large generator, or I'm not exactly sure what the transfer station switch. All right. Anyway, they're going to be those are the next items of business for the vendor that's currently there. So you'll see stuff coming out of the Ivy building as well. 158 and 200, I think they're removing debris and knocking down walls, doing some demolition for the residential apartments that are slated to be created in those two buildings. So a lot of activity happening on Main Street. Our community connectivity grant is in the process of being designed. Hopefully get that out to bid and a shovel in the ground, so some of the aesthetic changes we're making to Main Street and some of the improvements to the bike and pedie path, or creation of a bike and pedie path, you will see in the warmer months. 2 grants outstanding at EPA. One is for demolition, the other is for assessment. For demolition activities in the downtown area, and the assessment is for the subsurface testing of the Ansonia Copper and Brass site to move that on to the next level. So now we're going to look underneath and see what's there and what needs to be removed, what can be capped, what the potential reuses are. And the bar grant that we received, the engineers and the environmental consultants are out there, have already done aerial pictures, and the engineers are going out next week to test with the owner's permission, to test the structural integrity of the bridge, the Riverside Street Bridge that leads into the Ansonia Copper and Brass site. We we are going to, we're going to be talking to the Main Street Corporation, the National Main Street, Main Street entity about creating a Main Street entity for Ansonia. When we originally spoke, actually, when I originally spoke to Main Street about Derby, they said, well, perhaps you could join with Ansonia to create your own Main Street Corporation, which will enable us to qualify for more grants to enhance Main Street. There's all sorts of incentives, and it's a national program, connects Main Streets all over the country. And I think it'd be a good thing since our Main Street is really booming, and I think it's a natural progression to join and become part of that organization. So we'll be doing that. I think that's about it for now. If there's any questions, of course, I don't want to forget, I'm sorry, the Tax and City and Town Development Act, which I'm hoping that this board will approve, which will allow us to, again, have more tools in the toolbox and create greater incentives for development, especially in our downtown areas where we have our problem sites. So, any questions? Nothing?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Greg Martin,
Yes.
Constituent Services Director.
Thank you, President Vaccaro, greetings, members of the Aldermen Board. With spring just a few weeks away, we've got a handful of interesting clean and green initiatives through Mayor Cassetti and beautification projects that'll be getting started in April. Some good news related to these projects. We've raised over $12,000 for financing these improvements, $12,000 to date. There's potentially additional coming in from various businesses around Ansonia that have stepped up and have made generous donations, and also from the trolley track collectible sales. So we put it all together, we have a nice little war chest to play with here. The 3 beautification projects include, the first one that'll be launching is a Phase 2 Armory Hillside Landscaping. We retained a professional horticulturist from Monroe that has put together a wonderful landscaping project. We will be installing 2,000 flower and shrub plugs on the hill, and in the fall planting of about 500 to 1,000 daffodils. So next spring it's really going to look gorgeous over there. We will begin on Apestone Park, a number of beautifications and improvements actually over there, adding hiking trails. We're going to put a boardwalk on about 200 feet around the pond so that we can have a walking trail around the pond that'll go into the woods. All tallied up, it'll be about 1.5 miles. We will be repairing the basketball courts, kids playground, we're adding volleyball. We have the snack shack opening up. We're putting in picnic tables near the snack shack, some grills. The mayor wants to see boaters out on the pond in kayaks and canoes, so we're going to be adding a boat ramp as well. And some more spotlights just to try to discourage any vandalism on site. Another interesting project is a firehouse bell restoration. It was 1877. It's in storage now down at Public Works. That'll be professionally restored and put to a new home at the Webster O's Memorial Park on Central Street. And then lastly, April 27th this year will be the 3rd annual Earth Day cleanup. So we're expecting about 50 to 75 volunteers. It'll coincide with the nature center's on-site cleanup up there, and then we'll just do a gathering, a barbecue at the pavilion. So everyone, anybody who's interested or wants to volunteer, more information to follow. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever getting with getting a business that would like to donate basketball hoops to Pine Lot Park?
To which park?
Pine Lot?
Pine Lot.
Yes, I'll follow up with you, Rich, on
All
that.
right, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
I was just curious, did you get us all that stuff in one shot? Like, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. This was the Reader's Digest edition. But I will, yeah, we have some. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Greg. Yep. Mr. Bashir, have you passed the baton to Kim yet, or?
Yes, I have.
Attorney tonight, Kim DeStefano. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. We've got our bands. We've got some new bands to replace what will be expiring on us. So those are due to settle on Thursday. A little bit more money than we had before, so in hopes that that's going to help finance some of the projects, especially the PD that's going on right now. So we've got that and budget, of course, as we talked about, is being worked on. Looking at next year's budget and also kind of taking a look at this year where everything stands, forecasting out towards the end of the year to make sure everything is in place to end the year.
Thank you. Any questions for Kim? Thank you, Kim. Chief Coda.
Good evening. I'll make it brief. We have a recruit graduating the Academy March 27th. I'll be attending that graduation. So that'll be our final officer in the Academy out on the road. We had 2 police vehicles last week that were damaged. One was heavily damaged, struck by a person going by on Hodge Avenue. Unfortunately, we were at an untimely death investigation when our vehicles were struck, so we're trying to work those out. Hopefully they can be salvaged or fixed. If not, we'll have to make do and figure it out. We dealt with numerous snowbound cars and sidewalks. We did receive different calls from aldermen and neighbors. We were around checking. We removed quite a few cars from the area. It's the time you usually find your abandons. They just don't move, so we tag them and get them out of there. We're moving along, as Sheila said, on the building, the police department. We actually approved a preliminary plan to start moving into construction plans. So we hope to have those in. They gave us a time frame of 8 to 12 weeks, so we can continue moving forward. There's other smaller projects going along with that, but we are moving forward. We had a small power outage today on Main Street. It started over at Father Salemi Drive and went out. It appears as the transformer blew. It's about a half hour. UI came out and was able to get everything back on. We had some temporary stop signs up there for a little bit, but nothing major. And then we were able, I think I spoke last time, we had some damage to the Nature Center vehicle had gone up there and done damage. We actually made two arrests on that. They were juveniles that were in vehicles though, under 18. We made an arrest, and then we did have some damage done to Colony Park. We're still trying to wait for the snow to melt to assess that, but we're working on that. And that was the same day actually that we made the arrest for one. We had the damage reported up there. That'll be it unless somebody has some questions.
Before the word parking is always an issue for us. This is something we discuss a lot. A lot of complaints that I'm getting are vehicles with trailers, not just the one that we had spoke about, but a lot of them. And a lot of them during the snowstorm haven't moved and still have not moved. I do want to thank you because when I sent you that message and I spoke with you, the response with cars being moved in compliance was very good. So I want to thank you and your staff for helping us out.
Yeah, we'll continue to monitor. We're trying to get the word out to our officers because I think they're a little unsure. The rule used to be 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Now it's changed. You can't have trailers and campers and such. So we're trying to make sure and we're following up on those. If we see an officer went there and told somebody, well, just move the car, we're advising them. The new ordinance says you can't park it on the street at all. So we're making do as best as we can, but we are trying to get them off the street. One is the officers see them or based on a complaint. So we'll continue to do that.
Appreciate it.
Let us know.
Thank you.
Chief, could you do me a favor? I know this is an old issue, but it's still existing. It's never been addressed, obviously. The let-out at Prendergast School, for school, into school and out of school, is a big problem. That's just, I don't know if it's nobody wants to address it. I don't know if nobody has any ideas for it. You can't get up and down the street. They block driveways, they block roads, and they just park in the middle of the street. I called the police department. I spoke to a supervisor and said, you know, can somebody send somebody up here to at least get them down the side streets and park? His answer was, there's no parking signs on those side streets. I said, so you're not going to let them park on the side street, but you're going to let them park in the middle of the road. Doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if you're going to look the other way and let them block the road, then look the other way and let them park on the side street where there's no parking sign. And or if we can get some time things where you could park there between X amount of times so people can get off, because it's a nuisance. It's just people are just not addressing. I don't know why.
Yeah, we're aware of it. It's something that we've been starting to discuss in a police commission meeting. So we are thinking about some adjustments to some signs up there.
Help from the residents or anything, but everybody's tired of it up there. All you got to do is knock on the doors up there. And, you know, the beginning of school, the end of school, the street is completely blocked. When I tell you people just pull up and park, they just pull up and park right in the middle of the road. Like, it's okay.
And, you know, we go up there, we address it for a few days, and it resolves itself, and then a couple days after that, we're right back at it. But, yeah, there's definitely some some more review we're going to have to do.
And I understand it's not an easy situation, but like I said, if you're going to let them just park in the middle of the street, then why not let them park on the side street and let them walk to get their kids? At least traffic can flow.
Yeah. Some of it, those side streets, they're back about 50 feet. They shouldn't be parking up on the intersections because the buses and such can't get through. But we are aware of it, and we've started to talk about to see if there's an alternative way to eliminate that.
So there's got to be a better way to do it.
Yeah. So we'll continue to work on it for you.
And Chief, this is the last month for winter parking regulations?
It is. March 31st it ends, and then April we'll be able to return to normal parking.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Chief? Okay, thank you, Chief. Mr. DeLessio, fresh out of sick bed for 2 days. Public Works Director.
Good evening, everyone. I'll make myself brief. Just a few things. Fall started back up 1st of March for 3 months. Snowstorms, I'm hoping this is it for the snow. Our budget's kind of wiped out for overtime, and salt and sand is just about finished. So this is hopefully it's it. A couple more weeks it'll be warmer. So the guys are still out picking up trees, filling potholes. The big sewer main break took a lot of our manpower for the last month. First 2 weeks, a lot of overtime, manning the pumps. Spoke with Jason St. Jake's from the Sewer Authority. Came up with an idea of putting an automatic pump so we can get rid of our gentleman there. Worked out great. First day I talked to him, the next day he had it up and running. We haven't had a guy there doing overtime since it happened. So within the next few weeks, I bet you we're going to save about $30,000 in overtime. So Jason did a real good job coming up with the idea with the pump and manning itself. The machine turns on, turns off by itself instead of having somebody there turning it on and off every half hour. So that was a big savings for us. He did a great job. And we're working great together. WPCA and Public Works is working out really well. Other than that, just getting ready for the spring to come, and fields that got to be repaired. They're going to be wet for a while, so hopefully we can get them going, but it's going to be a little slow. They're soaked. I was up there the other day looking at Colony Park, Nature Center. Soccer fields are going to be a little bit of work, but we'll get them operating, maybe move them around this year. But hopefully it'll dry up quick, get some warm weather real fast. Other than that, refrigerators, air conditioners. I made a deal with the company we work with, Take Two. They're taking them for free now. Instead of spending $7 a piece to get the Freon out of them, they're taking them from us and giving us 5 cents a pound for electronics. So it's probably going to save us about $15,000 a year with the recyclables. Instead of getting charged, we're going to get paid for them now. And that's about it. Any questions from anybody? Yes.
I have one concern really is North Main Street walkway, which goes along, it's about, I don't know, quarter mile.
By
Goes from
apartments.
beginning from Liberty Street
Yeah.
all the way down to 3rd Street. There is nowhere else for anyone to walk.
Except for there.
And we have people in the road. I don't know what's happened if it's not being cleared, if the state's pushing some of it back, whatever the case is.
Yeah, we plowed it, and the state come by, there's been slushy snow. As soon as they go by, it just covers it again. We should have went back out there and took care of it. We were so short-handed with the Persian Drive deal going on now and everything else. We should have been out there. There's no excuse.
I understand.
People are walking.
Why? But
They're
I'm
walking
just saying
there.
because it's
Yeah,
a concern. Because I go through, I make it a point, just about every day I walk
Yeah.
through my ward and through downtown.
Right.
And I found myself the other night
Walking in the gutter line. You know, I saw it happen. You're right.
cars. I didn't want to end up like the raccoon that was sitting there for a month on the side of the road with my feet up in the air, frozen stiff.
That's why I was almost hoping people will walk the back road out. You know, it's almost the same distance, but people are, yeah, because that's always plowed. The trucks ain't going by fast. When the state goes by, you can just finish it, and they just hammer it. And it's like we didn't even touch it, which we did. We have to wait longer after the storm is done to take care of it.
Just a concern because there's a lot of people on foot.
No, you're not the only one that said that. We have a problem with the bridges too. The bridges are the state's responsibility.
Right.
They don't touch them. So we do at least one side so people can walk. You're right. The state doesn't do. They're not helping.
They're not helping.
I called them. They said, well, we're shorthanded. I said, well, we're shorthanded also, so we got to work together somewhat. That's why we do the bridges. Well, it'll be on the state because it's their responsibility, but we still have to keep it clean for our residents, which we try to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yes.
Mike, how close are we to implementing the fees for like tires and things like that?
Me and Mr. Vaccaro was talking about that last week. I'm going to come up with a number, like every other town, but at least not paying for the refrigerators and the ACs and all. Now we're not paying nothing, so it's a break even. But if we can collect a little bit of money on it, it'll be a little beneficial for the public works down there and the transfer station.
Yeah.
The tires, we're getting hit. We got to put a price on tires.
Tires, yeah.
What we have to do is so people can pay. Every time somebody comes in and we charge them, well, we don't have to. They think that everything is free. Demolition is not for free. When they get there, they don't have a check. They have cash. We can't take cash. So they're going to run out. They leave their license. They go get a check. They come back. What we need is a debit machine. Once that debit machine is implemented, it'll be a lot easier. Somebody comes in, they throw their card. People pay a card for a cup of coffee nowadays.
Right.
They always got their card on them. So if it's $5 for a tire or $6 for a tire, they got the card, they pay for it. Right now we're having problems for people paying. We're sending them out with loads of demolition because they don't have a check on them. That's the key from holding back on the pricing, getting things organized as a debit machine. Okay. Yes, Joe.
Mike, are you making any headway finding any new contractors to back up emergency
Yes.
policy?
Yes. Yep. I'm going to get a few more in. I got their price list from one. Brennan's price list. I'm going to get another big company to come in. So we have 3 different companies to go to.
Yeah, Burns, that's interesting.
Yeah, Burns Construction.
And Guerrera.
Guerrera, yeah. So we're going to we'll have enough on board to come up with their pricing per machine, per man hour. You know, some jobs, when it's time and material, you don't know how long it takes, so they price you out a machine, hourly per machine, hourly for their man hours, hourly for a pump, everything's per hour. If for a job like we're doing right now, you can't justify a price. You can't say, okay, the job's going to be $300 when they're there an extra 2 or 3 weeks. It's always time and material. But if they come in with different prices per machine and per man hour, we can just grab whoever's cheapest and there's the job. You know?
Do you find that working with the WPCA now is working out a little bit better since...
Yeah, I see a lot, yeah, a lot easier.
All right.
A lot smoother, let's put it that way.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Oh, Charlie? Sorry.
Yes, Charlie.
So, hey, Mike, I'm sorry you don't feel good.
It's all right.
You got, I take it from what you just said, you've got everything categorized?
Yeah, I'll have about 500 pictures for you.
And you got an engineer there
Yep.
with you?
Freddie comes in. I have 2 of my people there every day.
Yeah.
Just taking notes, what machine's being operated, how many men are there,
Yeah.
and how long they're working. Their notes are going to correspond with the contractors. And Freddie D'Amico's up here every Wednesday with him with a job meeting and go over the notes, make sure they jive hours.
Yeah, I guess they hit some big boulders over there when they
Yeah.
were driving the sheeting.
Finally, the sheeting's done.
Yeah.
They should have been done 2 days earlier, but they pulled out big stuff.
Yeah.
Say they must have went down 20 feet. They just left the job site, and they're way down, maybe 20, 25 feet. So I would think by tomorrow or Thursday, they're going to be to the pipe and repairing it. I'm hoping by, I'm not going to say how long, but they're there. They're pretty close.
It's big. It's a little
It's deep. Yeah, from looking down in the hole,
Yeah.
it's deep. They're down 20-something feet now, and they still got to go another 10 at least to get to the pipe.
Yeah. So I take it, because I was asked by fellow aldermen, you're keeping track of the fuel tank, right?
What fuel tank?
That Public Works.
Oh, yeah. It's
So I, guess the Derby and,
Yes.
you guys worked something out, but I mean, I was asking fellow aldermen, how do you
Every
regulate
truck.
it? I just, Mike's
Yeah.
got that all.
It's every person that pumps a gallon of gas. It's their car. Their birthday got to be programmed into the keypad. How many gallons they used and what vehicle is going in. It could be from Arms, Public Works, PD. We know exactly every month how many gallons each department used and how many gallons I used. If I filled up 3 times, it tells you 3 times. And what vehicle I put it into. If it's diesel or if it's gas. So say when Derby comes in, they got the same key. Their names are going to be in the computer. You do a report at the end of the month. It all prints out exactly to the gallon.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
I figured you'd be nice if
Yeah,
you
definitely. Yeah.
defined it for me.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay, very good, Charlie.
So, Mike.
Yes.
So each and every vehicle
Yeah.
It's on the card, and you can tell exactly how many gallons that one vehicle is using.
That vehicle took.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
You want a copy of that?
Committee reports, Finance Committee, is there a motion to pay all bills that found to be correct?
Pay all bills found to be correct.
Mr. Stowe, seconded by Mr. Schuer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Public Works Committee will pass over. Arms Committee, Mr. Blackwell.
Yes, the month of February, ARMS responded to 214 calls for service. We did 12 mutual aid calls to Derby, 1 to Shelton, and we received 1 mutual aid call. That was on a 3rd call for service. We had 2 units already out on calls. The highest receiving hospital for our transports was Griffin with 115, followed by Yale with 16, and then tied for 3rd was St. Vincent's and Yale Children's Hospital with 6 each. The total revenue brought in for the month of February is $67,193.76.
Thank you. Motion to accept that report?
So make a motion.
Mr. Rivers, seconded by Mr. Yalman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. WPCA, Mr. Stowe, anything to report?
Pretty much. I think it's been covered pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing
Mr.
good.
Philippone.
I believe the chairman of WPCA resigned.
Okay, speak into the microphone, please.
I believe the chairman of WPCA resigned, so I'd like to make a motion to accept his resignation.
Second.
Motion to accept his resignation by Mr. Prenti.
Yes.
Mr. Rivers, you seconded it?
Yes.
Discussion, gentlemen?
Do we have to accept it? I mean, if he doesn't want to work anymore, what happens if we said no?
Well, it's a vote.
Okay, yeah, but I'm in favor of it, just.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Fire Committee, Mr. Schuer.
Yep. From the Fire Marshal's report for the short month of February, during that period, the fire department responded to 40 calls, highlighted by 9 motor vehicle assists, 4 smoke investigations, 2 delayed ignition structure fires, 2 cooking fires, a propane gas leak, 6 false alarms, and 3 water leaks, for a total of 40 calls for February. That's it.
Thank you. Motion to accept the fire report.
Make a motion.
Mr. Cassetti, seconded by Mr. Yaman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ordinance Committee, Mr. Yaman.
I'd like to have a meeting, as Corporation Counsel indicated earlier. We have a couple things to discuss. I know ARMS has something they want to bring on the agenda, as well as we have the parking situation. There's an item, I believe, on tonight's agenda that's going to get referred to ordinance. Next week, if possible. I don't know if the members have availability on the 20th. That's been the date on mine, but I'll send out an email and we can confirm.
Thank you. Housing Committee, Mr. Cassetti.
Yeah, I have a notice that came out where they are moving. The office is relocating to 307 Main Street. That's the old Social Security building down here at the Smith building, actually. The Ansonia housing will be closed due to relocation from Friday the 22nd to March the 29th, and they'll reopen on Monday, April 1st. April Fool. Due to the relocation this month, we want to make you aware that we will be accepting paperwork for any changes up to Friday. So this has to do with basically anything that's coming through the city to them. The paperwork will be processed no later than Thursday, March 21st, and no other changes will be done until April. And that's about it.
Thank you, Joe. Any other committees to report tonight, gentlemen? Okay. Municipal reports. Is there a motion to accept the recommendations from both? Mr. King? Seconded by Mr. Cassetti?
Yes.
Discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. The Land Use Department report, I want to point out that The Dwight office brought in $6,017.50 last month, and thus far, year to date, it's $58,217.11. I'd like to make a motion to accept this report. Mr. Cassetti, seconded by Mr. Yaman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Tax collector report and request for refund. Mr. Casselitis.
Make a motion to accept the tax collector's report and request for refunds in the amount of $4,142.45 if found to be correct.
Mr. Yaman, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Accidents and claims. Mr. Casselitis.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council.
Mr. Yaman, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can I have a motion to accept late communication number 1? Mr. Cassetti and Mr. Yaman, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, communications. I'd like to ask that we table this motion. It's from William Lineski, Economic Development Commission Director. Motion to table. Mr. Yaman. Mr. Cassetti, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolutions. Resolution number 1 is regarding the contract between the City of Derby and Ansonia regarding them using our fuel pumps and gasoline. Is there a motion to accept this?
Make a motion to accept it.
Motion to approve. Mr. Short, seconded. Any discussion, gentlemen?
Just one clarification point with regards to the agreement. The agreement does, at certain points, specifically under paragraphs 5A, and I think there was another place, it refers to all Derby vehicles. I think it should be clarified that we're referring to all Derby municipal vehicles as opposed to Derby.
Find the public lined up.
So,
Mr. Casselitis.
Can we ask the motion just to have a copy of the fuel with our report like we did everything else every month? Even if it's via email?
Let's do the first motion. Actually, no problem with that, though, following up on this one. Mr. Marini, we all set with that?
Yeah, I just want to note, I mean, it does extra safe on that point, but I think early in the agreement, it makes it clear that City of Derby is being called Derby for short. So when it says Derby there, it does mean City of Derby. It's defined in the agreement.
in the description itself, it refers to Derby municipal vehicles, but later on, it does, there's no
You'd be
quotes.
consistent. I don't think anyone would, but it's always best to be
So
safe.
make sure everybody's not moving to Derby for free gas.
Motion on the floor in a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Casselitis, want to bring that motion up, please?
To make a motion that all the aldermen get a copy of the fuel reports once a month for our meetings, or we can just email, would be fine.
Mr. Short, second. Discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, resolution number 2. Conditions, I'll read this. Conditions substantially described in the Connecticut General Statute 7-481 exist in the city of Ansonia. This is regarding our public hearing. Is that right, Sheila?
Correct.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Yaman, second by Mr. Cassetti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Resolution number 3 is regarding the placement of the Martin Luther King Jr. bus statue. Whereas the Ansonia Board of Aldermen recognized Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as an inspirational and historic civil rights leader who fought for the human rights of African Americans and against all manner of racial, social, and economic injustice through peaceful protest, and whereas the Ansonia Board of Aldermen recognized Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy as a powerful symbol of unity, understanding, and equality in the face of extreme prejudice, ignorance, and division, and whereas the Ansonia Board of Aldermen desire to display a permanent, visible reminder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his accomplishments on property located adjacent to Ansonia City Hall so that Dr. King's legacy
may further inspire and influence all residents of the city of Ansonia. Therefore, it be resolved that a bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. be established in the lawn directly outside of the front doors of the Ansonia City Hall as depicted on the artist rendering attached to this resolution. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Rivers. Mr. Schubert seconded. Mr. King. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I want a discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion.
Yeah. So, when that got designed, is that on a pedestal or so? How is that going to be designed? The reason I'm asking is I would imagine that when the statue of Martin Luther King's on top of the pedestal, that if they wanted to celebrate his life and read something or something like that, they may want to have enough room on the pedestal to have some. Yeah.
You have a rendering of it.
Right, I mean, this is really...
It's a really high quality.
That's what kind of why I was asking. I just, is there's enough, everyone's satisfied and... Right, so if, if they want to celebrate his life, that they can stand behind it. Okay, that's all I really wanted. Thank you.
Any other discussion, gentlemen?
I just wanted to say I'm glad that everyone came together. I know there was a lot of discussion, came up with a good spot, and I think everyone's happy.
Thank you. And I want to recognize Reverend Al Smith and his committee for doing a bang-up job on discussion, gentlemen? Do we need to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Could we just head back to late communication number 1 from the City of Ansonia Building Department? Rhonda, you want to address the board on this? This is the
software?
building permit plan and review, your checklist.
I think the project, the software.
So on March 1st, we had a demonstration by Point Software. They do a building zoning light software so that we can put all our permits into the computer. It links to the assessor and the tax office. The cost of the software is $0. Right? The only thing is they charge us $10 per permit. So we already have a processing fee in our fee schedule, which is $10. So basically, it's going to cost us $9. We're just looking for approval to get the software installed.
Okay. This is different, John. Is that right?
So this is the software. The software does come with a cost in terms of revenue that would otherwise be going to the city, right? And it's paid by the...
Well, we already have a processing fee of $10 in place.
Yeah.
And so $10 would go for every permit that we issue.
So normally that processing fee goes to the city.
Correct.
If the software is adopted, and Rhonda and Marcia are here tonight to talk a little bit about what that software is, if the software is used, that fee would no longer go to the city. At least a portion of that fee would now go to the software company. In connection with this proposal, after talking with Marcia and Rhonda and hearing the presentation from the software company, we also decided to look into our fees to see if they were really up to where they should be in relation to other towns.
This is regarding the draft for the building permit plan review, field inspection list, and accessibility compliance with the Connecticut State.
It all really goes to the same thing.
Okay.
So on the other side, the idea is that if we are going to, if the board decides eventually to go with this system, And if our fees are actually low, maybe it makes sense to get them up to what the standard is in the Valley area, which would of course mitigate any loss of revenue that you're having by adopting the software. But in terms of understanding what the software does, you're also going to get a lot of value out of the software because of the interplay between the building department and the assessor's office. Likely you're going to be, almost obviously, going to be able to increase your capturing of the revenue that's out there. So it will, in a way, generate money in and of itself, but increasing the fees, if it's appropriate, will mitigate some of the loss of revenue you get with the program. I don't think adoption is necessary tonight because really this is twofold: selection of the appropriate software and also talking about the fees. Also, because you are giving up revenue here, it isn't free. We probably do want to take a look at a quote or two from some other vendors just to compare. And I would recommend, after questions are answered here tonight, that it be referred to committee to discuss those options and then bring back a recommendation together at the next meeting. But I certainly would like to hear from Marcia and Rhonda about what the software program does and how it's going to enable us to capture more revenue and run building better. Oh, Jared here. Jared also has been helping out with the project a lot as well.
Well, we kind of skipped over the agenda, John, so.
That's okay. I mean, you can,
okay, well, we can,
in whatever order makes sense.
Want to address it now? Sure.
Okay, so the program right now, we do all our building permits manually. So that entails people coming into the office, standing in lines for God knows how long. This would be online. They don't even have to come into the office. They would be approved online. They can pay online. Once it gets processed, they can then print their permit out and they're ready to go. They don't even have to leave their office. We have a lot of solar right now. People are coming in from New York and Massachusetts, so they're having to pay runners to come in to get their permits. They're very excited that we go online. As far as the fee schedule goes, the fee schedule hasn't changed since 2011. So currently we're charging $11 per $1,000 of estimated value. I think you have I gave out information of what the surrounding towns are. Seymour and Derby. Derby is at 15. Seymour is going to be raising theirs to 12. So that's what we proposed, was to go up with what Derby has, which is 15. If we were to do that, that would more than cover the $10 cost for each permit.
Mr. Cassetti.
Is this an actual purchase of the software?
There is no cost with the software. There's a cost with the processing of the permit.
Okay.
The software, the support, and the training are all given to us.
All right. Is there a commitment to for use, period of time?
No, we can get out of it at any time.
So if it doesn't work,
If we don't like it, we own all the information. They would just have to download it into our system.
Okay.
Because it's cloud-based.
thank you.
Jared, was you one of you heard?
I did not know about this specific software portion. We had talked to a couple other vendors a couple months ago. So if it's not in all a big rush, I'd like to see it go to the tech committee.
We're going to refer it to the ordinance committee, I believe. Marcia, do you want to be heard?
You know those meetings.
The tech committee should go to.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It was one of those platforms, was it available not only for the permits and stuff like that, but also the clerk's records in terms of, is there something that crosses assessor, land use, as well as the clerk's office for the land records online?
I don't think it's land records. It would be the assessor, tax office, and the building department.
The one that I looked at was, and I don't know because I haven't talked to these guys about it, encompassed multiple departments. I expressed to them that we wanted to include like permits for dumpsters, all the permits for road excavations, things like that. If you are a regular contractor, you register once and then be able to file all your permits online, things like that. But the big part that I liked about the one that I looked at was that it managed the workflow for inspections and ticket departments and things like that, which this may have too. I don't know. But it's kind of a technical.
Yeah. So, I make a motion to.
Wait. I'm
sorry.
Another question, Mr. Schuler.
Just quick, can you provide like a ballpark idea of how many permits you issued in a year?
I think last year it was like 875.
Marcia Beno, our assessor, please.
Okay, so I sent with Rhonda and on this one vendor's presentation, but just want to make it known that the software, whichever vendor you choose, it's really needed in the department to be accessible online. It helps with foot traffic as far as when they come in for a permit, you have to get sign off from the tax collector, sign off from the assessor, sign off from the building, sign off from WPCA, sign off from the fire marshal, and you have to start walking department to department. So they could go online, the permit comes in, it goes to the designated appointees for each department for approval. Each one of them says whether it's approved or not, so the tax office has to look up if taxes are paid by the owner and by the person doing the taking out the permit. Everything's there. It'll show up in the building department. There was 5 people it went out to, 5 approved. Now the building permit goes through. It also helps as far as I'd be able to print for my office. I'd be able to print off of there instead of having them to give me their multi-copy once a week along with the COs, because those have to be done, brought to my attention within 15 days of being issued by the building department, so it would flag that for me, as well as there might be an option to take the information that is data entered into the permit and possibly pull that out, or I can maybe incorporate it into my system so we're not double entering. They enter the permits, we enter the permits into 2 different systems. So that's very time consuming. And it also will give me the opportunity to see when a permit is up for final inspection. So instead of having the building inspector go out to the final issue the CO, I could kind of chime in and say, hey, I want to be involved in this inspection so that when you're done, I don't have to wait and go back and do the same inspection again for evaluation. So it's really getting the department on board and making it easier for the workflow and knowing how everything's being done.
Thank you. Mr. Rivers, do you have a question?
Is it still, I know years ago, you can only get a permit at certain times of day. Is that still or no?
Yes.
Okay, now this,
Only 2 hours a day.
now this system allow contractors to apply for permits 24 hours a day?
Yes, 24 hours a day. They would come in, we would download them in the morning, and they would go to all the departments.
That's a win.
The thing is, when they come in and we give them a sign off to go to the assessed WPCA tax, they're not only walking around to all these offices, they're interrupting that staff and whatever they're doing to check and sign off at that time.
No, understood.
And they could do it all at one time.
Yeah, it just makes it more accessible for contractors.
Exactly.
When I worked in the business, a lot of contractors wouldn't even apply for a permit in Ansonia because of the time, the time frame that it was open, getting there, it almost made it impossible. So now with this online, hopefully we get more contractors applying for permits. Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Okay. Mr. Yalman, want to refer this to the ordinance committee?
Yeah, I think Mr. Rivers is right. I think it has to go to both technology and
Okay.
ordinance.
So that'll be under new business, items 3 and 4, both of those.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Okay, so we're referring items 3 and 4 under new business to the ordinance committee and technology committee.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll schedule those meetings. Okay.
Do it consent.
Let me get back to resignations. I have a letter here from William Lineski, 93 Jackson Street, Ansonia, Connecticut. Dear Mayor Cassetti, I have reached a point where the demands of my personal life have exceeded my ability to effectively serve the city. It is with heavy heart that I resign my commissions. I truly have appreciated being part of your team and hope that the work we've started may be continued to benefit the great city of Ansonia. Mr. Lineski was the chairman of our Economic Development Commission. Letter of acceptance resignation, Mr. Yaman.
Motion to accept and send a letter. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Appointments. Mayor Cassetti's letter dated March 6, 2019. Board of Enforcement and Taxation. The appointment of Robert Jaskilka, unaffiliated voter, 38 Greenfield Drive, Ansonia, to a term that expires December 31st, 2020, not 2010. Sorry, 20. Bob, that's you. Motion to approve, Dan King. Mr. Cassetti, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Commission for Elderly Services, 3-year term. John Jack Ahern, Democrat, 16 Rufus Street, Ansonia, to a term that expires December 31st, 2019, replacing Ms. Lathrop. Motion to approve, Rich Gaslightis, seconded by Mr. Rivers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have two for the Naugatuck Valley Health District. Michael Margansky, Republican, 14 Franklin Street, Ansonia, to a term that expires March 12th, 2021, a new appointment. Mr. Cassetti, seconded by Mr. Rivers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thomas Clifford III, Democrat, 10 Southwest Wood Road, Ansonia, Connecticut, to a term that expires March 12, 2021, a reappointment. Mr. Cassetti, Mr. Schuer, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Inland Wetlands Commission, a 2-year term for Tim Holman, Republican, 48 Elm Street, Ansonia, to a term that expires March 6, 2021. Mr. Castellitis. Mr. Rivers, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Police Building Commission, Lori Vaccaro, Republican, 515 Beaver Street, Ansonia, and Joseph Yalman, Republican, 183 Wakely Avenue. Mr. Rivers, Mr. Blackwell, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Yalman and myself. Motion carried. Retirement Board, Gary Farrar, Democrat, 14 Kathy Lane, Ansonia, to a term that expires March 12, 2021. New appointment.
Mr. President, point
Yes.
of order. It's my understanding from the city charter that this is a 7-member board. Those 7 members are supposed to be the town clerk, the treasurer, 2 bulk members, 2 aldermen, and 1 member of Department of Public Works. Even though Gary's a friend of mine, I don't believe that he's any of the above. So how could he be on this retirement board?
That's a good question. I don't know. I couldn't answer that question. Anyone?
There are specific designations, as Alderman Tripp indicated.
Okay, so then we should
Motion
table. Thank you, Mr. Tripp.
Yes, sir.
The Zoning Board of Appeals for a 5-year term, Henry Bolatz, Democrat, 16 Sobin Drive, to a term that expires February 12, 2024, as a reappointment. Mr. Schuer and Mr. Blackwell, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, there are no ordinances tonight. Under new business, we have Pat Civitella regarding the use of vacant land located at 1 Jewett Street. I'd like to refer that to our Property and Sales Automatic Subcommittee. Mr. Yaman?
824 referral from planning and zoning, I believe, so we have to refer to planning and zoning.
Is that right?
I'm not mistaken.
Maria? Mr. Marine? Does that have to go to planning and zoning? It does? Okay.
You can move on it pending their approval, because remember, Connecticut General Statutes 8-24, anytime you're selling or purchasing properties or property rights, you need to get a recommendation from that board. So
Okay,
one
so-
will have to be on file before everything is complete. I would advise that this board can take action pending their recommendation, so as not to delay the proceedings, but you will need that before it's on.
Okay, Mr. Yaman?
I would prefer to make the referral before acting on whether or not.
Referral to
To planning and
planning
zoning.
and zoning
824.
for 824?
Yeah.
That's a motion?
Second.
Mr. Castellitis, second. Discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, say aye. Oh, Mr. King?
One other comment, this property, as it sits, if everyone doesn't know, this is the area, it used to be a park.
Yeah.
Cook's Pond, and it was a park, and it was a public use area. My concern is, we were talking about making it a parking lot, that's a wetlands area. We have water from the reservoir that flows through there. There's a stream, there was a waterway, there's a small bridge under there, that's where we're talking about putting this. So wouldn't we also have to look at environmental issues? We're talking about putting cars right on the embankment of the waterway. I mean, my concern is, you know, there's a reason why nothing else was ever built there.
Okay. Mr. Tripp.
Mr. President, just to segue off what Mr. King is saying, thanks for pointing that out, Dan. There was a sign there, I believe it's still there, it's Hull's Mill. I mean, there was a mill there, and all those big, huge, beautiful stones, I believe that was once part of it. So I'm just curious, does that area, that bridge, Hull's Mill area, have historical significance?
It does.
Thank you, Mr. King.
So, gentlemen, your pleasure.
I would just say that, I mean, no matter what, we can't do anything without an 824, whether or not it's approved or disapproved by planning and zoning. I would defer to them and their expertise. If they think it needs referral to inland wetlands, they can make the proper referral.
Okay.
And then it comes back to us?
And then it would come back to us for any approval and any action with regards to Mr. Sabatelli's request to go to the
All right. Should we also refer it to inland wetlands, I'm wondering?
I would defer to the chairman of the planning and zoning. He can make that referral.
We have 3 members of the wetlands on our board.
Okay. All right. Motion on the floor, second by Mr. Castellitis. Is that right, Rich?
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion carried. Number 2, the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation regarding the sale easement of Maple Street Bridge. They want to, I guess, put up a new light over there. Mr. Yaman?
I have an inquiry for Corporation Counsel. I believe this needs an 824 as well.
That is correct. It's a property right. It's not the sale of the bridge. It's an easement. However, it's still subject to that 824 process.
So then I would make a motion to refer to planning and zoning for an 824 referral.
Is there a second? Mr. Castellitis, all in favor? Any discussion?
Isn't there going to be some development in that area and not too distant future in that area? So wouldn't it be wise to wait until the development is done before any decisions are made?
So in this case, the state wants to put in the traffic control. It needs the ability, when it does it, to service the traffic control. So it's essentially telling the city, look, we'll pay you for that. It's a nominal value. It's like $200, $300. But they're basically saying, you know, take the money or we will eminent domain from the city. So we won't have much of a choice about it. But ultimately, it does not affect the development at all. It's simply the ability for them to service the traffic control signal. So this is not something that will have any negative play on their
Further discussion?
I'm just wondering, Chief, do you know of any activity as far as accidents at that intersection?
Are you talking about the Maple Street, Olson?
Right,
coming over?
And the Main Street, what's going to be right in front of the police department? Well, not the front, it'll be the back of the police department.
We were talking, so you're talking about coming over to Main Street?
Yeah.
The traffic, they're looking for traffic lights there to redo this. Is this the project that they're talking about already, the community?
Yes, connectivity.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's gonna encompass it, but then we're not making that change. State wants to make
The state wants
it in advance on that project.
Yeah, yeah, so when we talked about it, sent the letter out to the engineers. to
Right.
ask them if it would interfere.
Yes, correct.
There were no issues from what the engineers that were looking at this community connectivity project, as well as the state. It's, the way I understand it, looking at the prints, it's going to be almost direct replacement per se of the pedestrian crosswalks and traffic lights. For the current plan, it's not going to interfere because the entranceway to the new building is not going to be on Main Street any longer. It's going to be within the parking lot. So we don't anticipate it causing any problems. Accidents are occasional, but our problem is it's usually a left turn from Main Street onto Maple Street.
Yeah, that's a disaster.
So, and I think this is part of getting a left turn arrow there. I believe that's part of this whole thing. That would actually create more safety for us as opposed to people trying to rush the light with the cars coming down Main Street from the four corners and running the risk of getting, colliding at that intersection. So, with all the proper board's approval, I don't anticipate it's going to create more problems. It's actually probably going to alleviate. We don't have a numerous amount of accidents there, but when we do, it's generally that left-hand turn from Main onto Maples where they're occurring.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We already handled new business items 3 and 4, so let's go to number 5, the agreement between TaxServe Capital Services, LLC, and Vial Alert Systems, LLC. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve that, and I also want to, once we get that, I want to schedule a committee to, kind of like a boot committee. This is for our residents, car owners who don't pay property tax on their cars. Is that correct, Sheila?
That's it.
Right. Any discussion on this, gentlemen?
Yes, Mr. President. Just want to point out a few notes. I've also looked at what the city of Shelton does as far as scofflaws and et cetera. And is what they do over in Shelton is they take legal action that can result in an individual's paycheck being attached, if that's the correct legal term. Thank you, Sheila. My way of seeing this is if somebody's legitimately struggling to pay their car taxes, and let's just, for instance, an example, a single mom with a couple of children, she needs that car to get her children daycare so she can go to work, and who knows her financial situation, probably not good. And I know there's a lot of people like that here in the city of Ansonia. To put a boot on their car, not only is they're going to have to pay the back taxes, which they should do anyways, so from a negotiated process, but then, what is it, $200 to get that boot off, if I read that correctly? So, I mean, if she can't afford to pay her taxes, I don't understand how she's going to be able to pay, him or her, going to be able to pay $200 for the boot and then pay the taxes. I just think it targets a certain segment of society, and I cannot vote for this.
Okay.
There's also a lot of people who register their car in other states that are living here, and their car, on their cars, the license plates. So, and those are very difficult to track, and motor vehicles really difficult for the tax collector to collect. So, just looking for extra tools. And I guess I understand Phil's point as well, Alderman Tripp's point, but I would say that those residents who are paying their motor vehicle taxes, I mean, you're trying to be equitable across the board, but warrants further discussion, and we're just going to try another tool for the tax collector.
Mr. Tripp, we discussed this a few years back, I believe.
Yes,
as well,
we did.
right?
Yes, sir. And we decided not to do it because they got into the car would have to get towed and everything else. So, I felt for good reason the Board of Aldermen tabled it. So, you guys proceed as you will.
I don't think taxpayers want it. I think some taxpayers are demanding that we collect these back taxes. It's going to be interesting to find out what the tally is in back taxes that are owed by our motor vehicle tax scofflaws. Yeah. But anyways, Mr. Yalman.
I was just curious as to what, this is obviously not the first step in the process to try to elicit the payment of the taxes that are due on the vehicle. How far along is this in the process? How many notifications are sent to residents that owe back taxes on the vehicles? Do we have an idea of what we're talking about in terms of zero?
Yeah, I mean, the tax collector still proceeds with her normal way of sending out notices and notifying motor vehicle people that haven't paid their motor vehicle taxes. This is in addition to that.
But what I'm saying is that the taxes are due July 1st by August 1st. So we're not talking about boots being placed on the cars on August 2nd.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
We're talking, I mean, there's many attempts to collect this before it's being referred out.
That's correct. And sometimes just the discussion about the boot brings in some people who want to avoid that whole situation.
And does we're determining who is sent to this company for booting? So this isn't we're going to automatically, everything goes there after the taxes become delinquent.
The statutory authority is with the tax collector, and the tax collector has indicated that she desires an informational session with the residents, with this board, to essentially lay out how the process would take place, what the deadlines are going to be, who exactly it would affect. And like many of our other policies, we hope not a single boot is placed. The hope is that when this makes its way out to the public, when it makes its way out to the media, that there's enough attention to entice people to come in and pay it before anything like that has to happen.
Just one final, if I'm sorry, guys. To alleviate some of the concerns that Alderman Tripp just brought up, that doesn't necessarily mean that action has to be taken. The resident can make contact and say, I can't pay it all up front, but I can pay you X dollars and come current with that, and that will avoid having a booth being placed on the car.
It's really about bringing someone into the office who may have simply never even come in to say they can't pay. Surprisingly, we have a lot of cases where individuals are just making no effort to even reach out to find out if a plan is available. They're simply being unresponsive to the tax collectors. Many efforts, so just putting time and money into sending letters, trying phone calls, really trying to get out there and figure out what is preventing this individual from paying.
Question. So say somebody didn't pay their car taxes, they have a couple vehicles, it's a good amount, and you boot their car and you find out maybe they've been in the hospital for the last 11 months, because this is a case I would actually know. Would they be willing to remove that boot at no cost and make a payment plan with somebody that's sick like that?
I mean, in our discussions with the tax collector and tax serve, they indicated that if there really is no way to pay, there are provisions where the boot could be released. And I would certainly think, and this is something we could direct to our tax collector, if this is the case of someone who's in the hospital, who's a military service, I don't feel they should be suffering that consequence if they didn't understand what was happening, if they didn't get proper notice. There certainly are the circumstances where a person's not at fault, and we're going to have a fair process, due process here to make sure someone has the ability to appeal what's going on.
Wow.
I think I had my hand up. Several people gotten in front of me.
Good, Charlie.
Several. First of all, people should pay their taxes. First of all. So my question is, when this gets implemented, when we pass this, is there going to be a public hearing on this?
There was scheduled to be an informational session from the tax collector.
So you're having okay.
And then
so when this, if and when this gets passed, how long from the time it passes is you? If a person owns a month, they're behind. Do they get the boot?
What are the regulations?
Well, I mean, when you, let's just say you're driving around, your taxes are paid, and now all of a sudden you're a month behind. Month behind, did they put the boot on you? A day behind, did they put the boot on you?
Those are parameters the tax collector sets, and I think that's the next stop, is to talk with the tax collector and indicate to her what you, as the governing body, would like to see. Because remember, that tax collector is empowered to make those decisions. She's also responsible, ultimately, for collecting and making sure your revenue is where it needs to be. So she has both the power and the responsibility there. But you, as the legislative body, can certainly make those recommendations that you want to see X amount of due process there, notice periods.
So how does it work with the towing, John? Does the person who does city towing, do they get the towing, or is it
I believe the company controls
the company provides the towing. The company provides the plate to store them. I assume they have storage penalty fees the longer they don't pay them.
I actually don't believe they take them away. I think they just lock it on the site.
In place.
Well, I mean, what goes on if the person who owns it just doesn't, refuses to kind of show up?
Well, I actually
they could explain that. They do have
one
provisions for that.
What's that?
They have provisions for that, like the length of time to keep it locked for, how that works.
Well, because I mean, there's a lot of cars around that are kind of junk. So what happens if they go? I don't want to pay my taxes on this. Let it sit there with the boots on it. So what happens then? It may ultimately prove to be an inefficient way of collecting against those particular individuals. If that person isn't troubled by the car being locked up, they don't have any need to use it. That may be a case where this is not going to be an effective method. That it may be unlocked. Well, I mean, this is going to bring in a whole bunch of things you've never seen before. There's no question, because there's a lot of people who drive around cars that aren't even theirs with false plates on it and everything else.
And it's very hard for the tax collector to identify them, or anybody for that matter to, you know.
I'm all for it. I mean, you gotta pay your taxes, and you're saying that there's a way to, if you do have a real problem that's legitimate, you know, real suffering, not, you know.
Yeah, the city,
hardship.
I feel, and the mayor feels when we talk to the company, there needs to be a way that if it is truly someone who, hey, was in the hospital for the last month when the bill was due, there needs to be a way to give relief to that individual and not to penalize them for something that they lost control over. But remember, it all comes back to taxes are due, right? So there aren't many provisions, even if you don't know, right? If you didn't get your notice in the mail like you normally do, you're still responsible for paying your taxes because it's assumed that you know the law and you know the day your taxes are due. That happens a lot with people that depend on their, say, mortgage holder, the bank, to pay the taxes. And it turns out, oh, it just didn't get paid, and we'll turn around and blame the bank. But the letter of the law holds the individual owner responsible. You're assumed to know the law because the law does not penalize the city for their inability to keep up with what's going on. But yes, there are those situations with elderly, with really sick individuals where we want to be at least accommodating in those situations where it's true.
The next issue I see is if you look at snow, can you give me a rough estimate how many cars we've red tagged that never even moved?
I'd have to go back and look at it.
It's a lot, right?
I mean, well, we don't necessarily have to move. What we want is compliance to clean them off. So if they went out and they made the effort to clean the cars off and dug out the front to get to the car, and it's still currently registered, that's compliance in ours. So I mean, I would have to look at the book. I don't have the exact.
So if we have vehicles like that and you're booting cars and leaving them in the road, like for the fourth ward, that's going to be an issue for us because we don't have parking as it is. And if these cars are left in the road, that becomes a big issue for us.
My guess is there's going to have to be preparation done for the implementation of the initial program. That's where you're going to get the most amount of disruption. And these are details that would have to be worked out with both your board, tax collector, and taxer. But again, there have been many cities that have implemented this. And although it's creating some discomfort on the city's level, it's certainly creating discomfort on the part of the person who's not paying their taxes. And to this point, in some cases, has gotten away for years and years and years with not making payment to the city for the privilege that they have, which is driving their car within Ansonia and beyond.
Okay, so this is why I think that this should be referred to ordinance and the boot committee, because we should have a clear policy in place, a clear procedure on when it gets booted, how long after it's due.
I think establishing a boot committee to work with the tax collector and tax
Right.
serve, schedule an informational hearing, and making sure this board does have input in the process,
Right.
because you represent the residents, whether they're paying the taxes or not. And the big thing is to make sure that any policy is humane, that any policy is addressing circumstances that Alderman Castellitis brought up, to make sure there's due process. All those things are very, very important. And like any of our programs, like I was talking about snow removal before, it's not about the penalty, it's about the compliance. And here we're looking for fairness. We're looking to make sure that everyone is being treated fairly under the laws, and that everyone's making payment for really towards the good of the city to support our services and everything that you're doing for Ansonia.
Point, Mr. King was next.
I just have a concern that this could affect some of our residents more than others. I mean, do we set it up as a dollar amount to be collected? Because what's a little bit of money to one resident is a lot of money to another. So somebody has a 10-year-old car, their property tax is $75 a year. They didn't have it when the bill came in. They have a delinquent notice. They go into the pile. They now get a $175 fee on top of a $75 tax bill. Their car is booted. Somebody else takes a car, goes to another state, registers it with a different marker deal. I see them all the time. Most likely Florida, New Hampshire, Vermont, no property tax. They don't even need insurance, and they're driving on our streets. That's why they do it. Now, we're doing nothing about catching them. They're using our streets, our roads, all our services, and not paying any tax at all. Now, And also, in some neighborhoods, the cars are going to be on the street. That's where it's a little unfair, because you can boot these. Somebody else goes and they park their car that they haven't paid taxes on in 2 years, put it in the driveway. Good luck.
Yeah, they can't go in.
You can't go in there.
I mean, I think there's ways to address some of that inequity in terms of the out-of-state
Yeah,
plates.
they can.
We've had some conversations actually with the police department. We have, one of our vehicles does have a scanner on it. And if it's properly equipped with software, it could be used to actually identify, to run plate after plate after plate all day long.
And the tax board would
And
brought that up.
communicate that to the tax and the assessor's office. Now, that's something that has to be looked into, how we could acquire that software. We know other cities like Bridgeport do use it, and so that could be another way that we could collect. But we certainly do have a collection issue. We have about 2,600 delinquent accounts, which make up $1.5 million in delinquent taxes owed to the city, and I would say that to the residents of Ansonia that look to us to budget for services, a wide range of services. So that money, not having that money, makes it more difficult to do what needs to be done. In terms of the valuation of motor vehicles, it's a mill rate, right, that's applied to your particular vehicle. So your taxes are pretty much standard across the board based on what the mill rate is. You're looking for fair compliance.
For the vehicles, so that really doesn't affect us day to day. But we're going to have more people paying more in fees than what is owed in taxes. How does that?
You're going to get people with, my car costs, I paid $235 for it. Needed some work. Car's probably worth a couple $1,000. If you booted it and it cost me more to get my car and booted than what I paid for it, I probably wouldn't move it. I'd say
I keep the boot.
And that's the same case with certain individuals with commercial property or residential property. They may owe more on taxes than the property's worth. And the same situation develops there. So the ultimate question, how do you make progress towards that 1.5 million that's owed, a significant number that affects your budget, and at the same time be fair and like there's many situations. Some people are doing it because they simply can't afford it. Others are doing it because they're getting away with it, and they're using their money for funds for other things.
Regarding out-of-state plates, Dan, I reported a couple cars to our assessor, and she took appropriate action. Out-of-state cars, out-of-state plates. Right, Marcia? Thank you.
Yeah, anytime anybody finds an out of, what I need is just the location, if you've got the information out of the year, maybe, probably not your name, model. Picture is great, what houses they're in front of. New York, I could run plates and find out who the owner is. Other states are not as forthcoming with information, they don't want to share it. But if I could get a name and say, is this the name of the county that's going to
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, it seemed like a lot of trouble to be going through. Are they going to get a list of people who are delinquent, just to be out there doing license plate scanning? Is that an efficient enough way to render this policy here effective?
They've used the boot in Waterbury, and I can tell you that obviously there's greater volume, but that was an extremely successful program that brought in about $400,000 a month in additional revenue. Because it's as I said before, it's very difficult to track these cars and especially to track out-of-state vehicles. So, I mean, it's, you have a $1.5 million hole to fill. It would be nice to make a dent in there somewhere.
That's 2 mills.
Yeah.
It might be nice to make it dent, but I don't know if this is the most effective way to do it.
Not a dent in the car, but okay.
Something else.
But I don't know.
Something else I
this
forgot to
community,
ask
I don't know.
is, when we initiate this, how long of a time, if you initiated this and then all of a sudden you decided you didn't want to do it anymore, how long's the contract with this company?
The contract is with the company that's been collecting our taxes for some time already, not with
Motor
the
vehicles.
So it's not really an issue of the contract, it's an issue of the program. The tax collector, again, has discretion to say, I don't want to collect through that method. So
anytime.
So really anytime.
Okay.
And again, I think it's a matter, because the tax collector does have that statutory authority to be
Okay,
recommending
so
and
we can
implementing
find out,
this
so we
process.
can find out if this is a success, and if it is, we just keep it going, and if we don't feel it's a success, we can stop at any time. What more could you ask for? Let's get the revenue. I want that revenue.
Mr. Black.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. One, I just want to let, for the record, know that I'm not a fan of motor vehicle tax. I think it's a tax that we should done away with. Two, is this go tag the vehicle or the individual? Like if Dave Blackwell owes taxes and I got 3 cars, but only one of them is delinquent, so it goes to the vehicle, not the person. All right, I think that's a little bit, I think it should go to the person. The person owes the taxes, not the vehicle. They're owed on the vehicle, but the person owes the taxes. So if you owe on one vehicle, I think they should be able to group all your vehicles till you're paid up. Secondly, just to dovetail off of what Dan said, I think it affects the people who live in apartments, which is a large population of this city, more than it affects the people that I represent. 99% of the people I represent, park in driveways at night and their vehicles are safe. The other people who may not have access to a driveway or they have to park on the street, they're already at a disadvantage to the people who live on the hilltop that, Josh and I represent. Just trying to make it fair all the way around, that's all. I just don't think that's a fair playing ground. Be fair to, the east side of town to the west side of town. And other than that, when the committee gets together, I think that a receipt of like a certified letter back to the tax collector saying that we've made every attempt to, you're basically, your car's going to get booted now. And they know it, we know they know it, and then I think that the boot should be able to be put on that. But that could be hashed out in the ordinance or anything like that. But I just want to see if there's a way we can do the individual instead of the vehicle. The individual actually owes the tax.
And tax serve, I believe it does go with the particular vehicle, so.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, that's what I don't like about it.
We could explore those options.
Right. You could owe $80,000 in taxes on one vehicle parked in your driveway, and you could drive around 2 more all day long. I think it should go towards the individual rather than the vehicle in order to be really effective. But that's out of my control.
Any further discussion, gentlemen? Okay, we're going to vote this, gentlemen. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to refer this to the ordinance and boot committee and tax. Let's talk about it. The procedure, a procedure that's going to be fair to everybody.
And it's going to be done by the next meeting?
Yeah.
We can't be waiting for that revenue.
When that's next week. Get that motion?
Move to refer to ordinance.
And a boot
Maybe
committee.
boot committee and the tax office will proceed.
I can work with John. Okay. Motion in a second, correct? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, old business. I'm going to ask that we table the revised personnel policy. I got a call from a department head this afternoon with some questions and it calls for further discussion. So if we have a motion to table, Mr. Yaman and Mr. Rivers, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Executive session. Mr. Marini?
President?
Yes, Mr. Tripp.
Did you call for any other old business?
Sure. Under old business?
Yes, if I could just, if I may.
Hold on.
If I,
Hey, we're still in session?
Members of the board are still in session.
thank you, Mr. President. If I recall correctly, in our last Board of Aldermen meeting, Mr. Martin Dempsey made a motion that we were discussing the middle school, and a motion was made to table. All right. Subsequently to that, Mr. Martin Dempsey made the motion. I believe the vote was unanimous, but there was majority consent that the subject of the middle school would be placed on this month's agenda. And I'm just a little bit befuddled as I look through this agenda, and nowhere on this agenda is discussion of the middle school. Now, I did see Dr. DeBacco out there earlier this evening when we came in, but I'm just curious as to why discussion of the middle school was not placed on this month's agenda. And everybody voted for it. We all want it on the agenda this month. I'm just curious what happened.
You want to discuss it under old business tonight?
If other folks want to discuss it.
It should have been on the agenda, you're right, you're correct.
I saw Dr. DeBacco was out here, and also I believe there was a gentleman from the state of Connecticut that was here to give information from the state of Connecticut as to utility of that building. Oh, I'm looking right at you. Could Dr. DeBacco say some words about
Absolutely.
this? Sure.
I asked, after our last meeting, we had a meeting with the director of school construction and grants at the State Department of Education, Casas Diamantis, and I asked Casas to come to answer any questions that we have regarding, because there was a lot of questions that you had came down, and I wanted to give the floor to my alderman to ask any questions that you believe were unanswered or ambiguous or otherwise. So I just wanted to introduce Mr. Diamantis. I will not put words in his mouth. I already told you that, and he can speak for himself. But we had a meeting in January, and can explain exactly what our meeting entails. There were some questions about could we do specifications and also building specs. Could we do that concurrently while regionalization is going on? Some questions with that. I'd rather you hear it from right from the source than hear it from myself. So whatever questions you want to say, I appreciate you coming.
Sure. I was invited to come down and came down. So that if there are any questions or if any folks needed any answers that I can provide.
Excuse me, can you spell your name, please, and your address?
Sure. My last name is Diamantis, D-I-A-M-A-N-T-I-S. My first name is Costa. I am the director of the Office of School Construction and Grants and for the Department of Administrative Services in the state of Connecticut. In fact, our office handles all the renovations, school construction, code violations, groups, etc. that occur to all public schools in the state of Connecticut, including the technical high schools, including the ones in your city. So I'm here to answer any questions you'd like.
So I have a quick question. I think part of, or a big part of the, I don't want to say confusion, but a lot of the discussion at the last meeting was what we were actually committing to. Whether we were committing to a study to look at it concurrently with the study regionalization, or whether we were committing to the building of a new school, step one.
Based on the information that was provided today, we were not proceeding forward with the building of a new school. Statutory requirements are multiple if you look at your statutes, and I'm sure your court counsel probably has, that you are certainly can allow for the ability to do just schematic design. That's all you need to appropriate if that's what you wanted to do, along with your other resolutions to submit an application and authorize the superintendent to proceed with an application for a particular project. Or you can do just that. You can allow for a study to occur to run contiguous with the idea of regionalization, which is something I understand that Ansonia and Derby have committed to through the Office of Policy and Management, which I'm familiar with. Now, I look at it from a different perspective than the Office of Policy and Management. I see it as more cumbersome. The project process is longer. There's a lot to be discussed. Many things that the council has established to determine how you're going to operate your schools, run your schools, which schools are we going to use, because that's not totally decided by the districts. We have say that, since we're a major contributor and funding to that, and we've in fact built schools within the area. We like to see which schools, which ones we think are worth saving, which ones need renovating, whether we need to build a new school or not. The ultimate decision of a new school is not the districts, it belongs to us. Our architects and our engineers that are on staff in conjunction with consultants that we hire. In this particular case, you're going through a study to determine what you'd like to do, if you're going to do it with Derby, and whatever your relationship is with Derby and what you see yourselves doing. In the meantime, districts have a need for particular schools. Students require being in a healthy, safe, and secure environment that have up-to-date current needs that they can be meeting. It appears that middle school is one of those areas based on our discussions. Of course, I understand that you're running down that road with regionalization, which is a good thing. It's a healthy discussion and one needs to be had. However, because I'm involved in construction, and for construction people, time is money, there's nothing to suggest that we can't run operations contiguously. And if they were going to do a study, use their funds to proceed forward with a study to talk about some of the issues, enrollment, the number of schools, there's a lot to discuss. And we have the ability to provide some information to that, to the team from the Board of Education here locally, and hopefully facilitate some of that discussion so that it gets to the aldermen in both towns and proceed forward with informed information.
Lori?
Yes,
Through you, Mr. President. So why would the Board of Ed come to this board to request approval for a feasibility study?
I have a hard enough time maneuvering through the state legislature without having to know how each and every community maneuvers through their own districts. However, having said that, I've seen it all. So I'm not sure what the authorities are in this community. All I know is one of the things that I've indicated to the board, your Board of Education, as well as all the others, for us, transparency is important. We want the entire public to know what we're doing, how we're proceeding, and what it is we're trying to accomplish. In this particular case, especially if you're talking about regionalization, which, as you know, Governor Lamont has been talking regionalization, has encouraged towns to regionalize. He has increased, assuming it passes, has increased the reimbursement rate by 25%. That's the highest reimbursement rate between the towns that are regionalizing. So that reduces, of course, construction costs tremendously. It cannot exceed 95% because I think if you add 25 to your reimbursement rate, you'd be at 101. So the point is that you'd be at a 95% reimbursement rate should there be reimbursement, should you have a zonation program. If not, you're still at a high reimbursement rate. And what if town fathers, town leaders can't come to an agreement on a regionalization plan? In the meantime, the process of regionalization, as I see it, is about a 5 or 6 year process. So the question is, can your school survive 5 or 6 years? Are you in need? Do we waste 4 or 5 or 6 years not running a contiguous path? Let's see what the information is with the schools now that you have within your own district and talk about what are your needs in your own district and while you're running down the regionalization path. Because you're going to need the information for both.
Yeah, just one more question, Costas, and thanks for coming tonight.
Sure.
But the Board of Ed gets reimbursed for those costs if they do a study for $20,000, they would get reimbursed, right? If
down
the
the road
application goes, yeah.
Down the road. Once an application is submitted, it would, but at the outset, without the application being submitted, they would not get reimbursed. They would eventually would have to be an application for something to be reimbursed for. And in order to submit the application, you need the resolutions, of which there are 3.
Yep, right.
Now, it doesn't mean you need to go full vote and say we're going to pass, let's assume it's a $37 billion plan, that you're going to pass a resolution saying we're going to be buying $37 billion. No, you don't need to do that. The statute allows you to do something far less than that. So.
Is there oversight from your department regarding our school construction project on the Mead School portables that we built 3 years ago? And do you know how many students are in those portables? There's 6 classrooms.
Off the top of my head, I don't. I can find out easy enough. I don't know off the top of my head. My guess is going to be. Is it preschoolers? I remember there was a discussion, it was going back and forth, whether it was preschoolers or elementary students. You know?
Yeah, they were. However, for the Smart Start, the Smart Start grant has not continued. So we have Smart Start in other places. That's why we partnered with several bases. We're working on getting students in the area to bring them in. And we're going to utilize Dix's staff, our staff. Right now we have about 10 kids that we brought back to this
right.
Which are, and we have some that would have been placed out to other places at a pretty hefty expense. And had we not had the music program, I can tell you those 2 students would have probably cost us at least 3 times what we normally pay.
Okay.
But hopefully, by the next year, we'll see that have a supporting plan. That's my goal. That's what I'm pushing.
Mine too. Thank you.
Keep in mind, portables, when it leaves us, are supposed to be temporary solution, not a permanent
Right.
solution.
Right.
The idea is to move forward
That's right.
to eliminate children having to be in portables rather than in a structured environment within the school building.
Mr. President?
We, of course, have worked with Ansonia to move forward with those portables, understanding the situation that's occurring here, and trying to work with you as we are now.
Right.
Mr. Rivers?
No, go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
Thank you, Chicago. Mr. President, just, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Joe DeBacco, could you please tell me just a rough number, not exactly, how many students are currently in the Ansonia Middle School? Right now, roughly. 457 students attending school, and the building was built in, am I correct, 1937? 1937. So that building was built before the police station is going to be remodeled, correct? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Stowe.
Our goal, I think the majority of the aldermen that are in this room right now are presently, our goal is regionalization. We would like to see Derby and Ansonia operate together and try to find as much savings to help both towns as possible. So, you know, maybe this doesn't work out as far as the way state does things, but to me, you know, you guys should get together with Derby's Board of Ed and back and forth and find out if there's even a place, a location, if the two of you would work together. And then if that happened, then you could proceed and investigate. Because, I mean, we're having people move out of this state. And, you know, I couldn't believe it tonight. We had two individuals stand up and talk about tolls, which just, you know, I don't feel that it has any place really here because we're not really on a toll road. But it was brought up, and people are frustrated and they're leaving the state. So if we have less children here 5 years or 10 years down the road, which is very possible, you know, our school attendance is shrinking, right?
Is that true, Dr. DeBacco?
Actually, on average in the state, it's about 6.5%. Locally, we're about 1%. That's what the facilities demographics study.
1%.
1%. So
I think it,
per year.
Still, we're still this board is leaning towards regionalization. There's no question about it. I mean, everybody here is perfectly willing to jump on that commission or committee. They want to be involved in it. Everybody here wants to participate in that because they can see what good can come out of it. So, I mean, why is it that we need to do this now? Why can't you do some more research with Derby? That's my question.
I want to get a regionalization committee that is doing that study, but the biggest piece is, I'm coming to, we have about $2.5 million of fire life safety renovations with the do I want to ask you to come in here, hand me in $2.5 million for a building that is, I don't think it's worth it. And are we throwing good money to bad? Or is there a better option where we could get more money in return? We get pretty decent return on our investment when you're building anything and getting 76% back. We can't build anything like that. Where are you finding Derby's middle school, 72,000 square feet? Their high school can't subsume our population, nor could their middle school. Where do you have 15 acres of land that you could build a middle school in Derby and Ansonia? And I got to say, after the study comes out, any piece of property that you're looking at that's 15 acres or greater, that property value is already gone because they know that we're going to need a place that can house that amount of students. But we have a place that can house these students right on our high school property. So it's preparing for relocation. Actually, when we sat down with the amounts, he's like, I don't even want to hear anything. Exactly what he said. Unless your plan, it actually can include future regionalization. I don't even want to hear it, and the architect spoke. And the only way he would continue to listen was it had to incorporate plans for future regionalization. And I just want to bring it, I don't want to spend good money to that. And I would like our kids to have something, my community, something we can be proud of. I don't want to come to you and say, we need $2.5 million worth of renovations, because quote was to Silver and Petroselli, is this your paid, response, or is this your actual real response based on how much longer do you have in that building? And the response was, they're not going to make it 2 years. So in 2 years, guaranteed, we're going to be asking you for multiples of millions of dollars to renovate a building. And I'd just rather have us prepared for something than not be prepared at all. Say we have made no plan or no effort. That's
Mr. Yaman.
But just a couple of points, and thank you guys for being here and sort of shedding further light on this. But it was my understanding there was 2 requests at the last meeting. One was for the feasibility study, which I don't think you need this board's approval. The Board of Education had indicated through Mr. Tripp that they were willing to cover the $20,000 cost to do that.
Correct.
Secondarily, so I don't think you have my blessing to get the feasibility study done. I think it's important. I think you guys should do it. The second part of it is asking for the approval to make the application for a grant, which I understand after reviewing it. Well, a couple different things. Is number one, that you're asking us to commit a certain portion potentially down the road of a pay-in for the total cost of construction as the project breaks down, possibly up to 10% of the costs of that. And while we may be able to recoup some of the costs if there's a regionalization component to it, as I hear it right now, this is a building designed only for Ansonia. There has been no discussions with Derby, with Seymour, with any surrounding communities with regards to that regionalization. And what I'm hearing out of Hartford and every article I read and everything that the governor says is that they're going to, the state credit card is being cut up with the exception of regional projects for the purposes of trying to, become more efficient and consolidate. And that's not what I'm hearing here. So I guess I'm a little confused as to what we're trying to do. If it's for the purpose of the feasibility study, I'm all for it. I think we should look into it and see what we need, and then we can sort of reevaluate at that point.
Let me add a little more light to it. The regionalization plan is exactly the way you should be proceeding, and it's something I think that's important. So I concur there are cost savings there that you have. The other problem you have, of course, is the fact that you have a consultant suggesting that you have about a 2-year length left based on needs within that particular building for the students. Unfortunately, based on what was presented to us, there is no assistance by us to do those particular renovations to that particular building at that expense, because you would have to provide a 20-year life to that building before we would do any expenditure funds from our department on that building of itself. My suggestion upon the group being there, I believe there's a gentleman there who's part of the regionalization, if I remember correctly, was there from the committee, that I suggested to them that they go back and discuss which buildings they were going to use if, in fact, they were going to regionalize with you, right? So you each have a particular number of schools. I think you have 2 elementary schools here, middle school and a high school. Derby has 2 elementary, middle school and high school. They just did in 2007, I think. I was looking up the projects. Clearly, those are all too many buildings based on the number of students that exist in both of your communities if you began to regionalize. So guess what? Somebody's going to have to close the school. So the question is, which ones, right? Who's going to have the elementary school? Who's going to have the middle school? Who's going to have the high school? And where's everybody go? What are the programs that superintendents that right now that are running at each school, and where are they going to be housed? Where are they best housed? 3 schools, have to be on the first level of all programs. We are trying to encourage special ed students to come back to the district. We have lightened our rules with respect to the space standards, because we recognize Tier 2 special ed students have paraprofessionals, nurses, our wheelchair equipment, takes more room, more space. So the idea was for your Board of Ed, who should be doing the runaround, not us, along with the Derby Board of Ed, doing their running around with you folks, to determine and look at your buildings, do an assessment on the buildings here, an assessment on the buildings in a feasibility study in Derby, and try to run contiguous with what's going on with OPM and your regionalization plan. So you can be working these buildings, because at the end of the day, should this council or any council throughout the state of Connecticut pass a resolution that says we want a middle school, the first thing that's going to happen after it comes to us is we're going to look at that very thing. How many schools are in your district? Do you need them all? which ones are you going to close, what's the consolidation plan, and in your case, there's an added component, because you're smart enough to proceed forward with a regionalization plan. So that's going to be the other component. How does this particular building fit in to the regionalization plan? Because somebody is going to need to close some buildings. And certainly the state of Connecticut is not going to invest in a new middle school and then shut it down because the council for the regionalization plan decided they're going to close this middle school that we just built.
And
So those are the issues.
And Mr. Dumont, that was pretty much where I was going with that. These two, they're not separate and apart. The Temporary School Regionalization Committee, which I'm a member of, is on one track doing their study, and there should be more information, as I understand it, forthcoming towards November or December of this year. So we should have that information after the contractor goes through all of that and gathers all of its information. That being said, it seems to me that there's going to be that facilities study, and you're right. If we're going that route and it's feasible to regionalize, something's got to close. So the question that I have in my mind is that do we need to build the new building at this point in time, or does Derby have available space? I don't know if they do. And before I want to say yes to granting, putting the taxpayer dollars out there to make an application and put us on the hook potentially, let's have that conversation with Derby. Right. And I think our Board of Education should be having that conversation, reaching out to Dr. Conway, reaching out to Mike and Seymour, and determining, hey, are there any ways that we can consolidate, become more efficient, and share those services?
The question posed to us when I was at work on our computer, and that was sent it to me, was any vote to approve $20,000 in fact buying the community to an entire project? And I think my response was no. I don't remember the percentage. But somebody from here, and that is still my answer. The answer is no, not now. But it's great to work on a feasibility study, which, oh, by the way, I will always also refer to you that, in fact, if you are doing an existing building's conditions study, what your building's conditions are in, which you began already in Ansonia, and Derby does the same thing, we also indicated that we will assist you in paying for that up to a capital of $8,500. Because we think it's important to do existing studies, conditions on your building, so we know what state they're in and which ones are worth salvaging and not. That saves each town's money, and it saves the state money. So these are all things that need to be done.
Okay.
That's what we were separating.
But say that they...
Excuse me. Dan had his hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one point. When this was presented to us by the Board of Education, we tabled it. Nothing against a feasibility study. Nothing against funding it. We think those are all good ideas. We're already on that track and doing it. The language in the letter, what they asked this board for, was not for a feasibility study. It asked for permission to apply for grants and have the right to accept or refuse. That's why it was tabled. So I'm glad you're here. You have a lot of good information, which should go to our regionalization and maybe the Board of Education. They need to know how these things work too. I've been on the school building committee. I think we're still waiting for some funding that was promised by the Board of Education and by the state, which I haven't seen yet. The feasibility study.
You could ask our controller, he'll tell you.
Okay, but when somebody comes to us, whether, it's an elected representative or a representative of the state, and they speak in English and tell you, don't you worry about it, we're going to get this money. Okay, doesn't go through. We don't get the money. We're still waiting for that. We overspent. We haven't seen the results. We spent a lot of money on what's, as you said, is a temporary fixture. So those go into account too when we go to regionalize, look at, because we can't, I understand, we can't count those classrooms as available size because they're temporary. So I love the feasibility study. If the school board wants to do it, I absolutely agree that they should do it. Because then they could maybe avoid pitfalls that they've had, like with the middle school. The repairs, where we keep hearing this renovations, $2 million. Does that include the amount of money that we're now wasting because the boiler wasn't done in the summer? We decided to wait to do it in the winter. And we're paying for a rental boiler to heat that building, which is now in the way of the project that's ongoing to repair it. So, when we're throwing money away like that, I guess $20,000 isn't a lot, but I would like to see a result for it. And if they want to do it, then that's great. But this comes back to, nobody on this board said no to doing a feasibility study. We said no to handing over the power of accepting and moving ahead with a project that ultimately the taxpayers have to pay for.
And if we're talking about the funding with respect to the portables, is that the funding we're talking about? I suggest that meeting be set up, and whoever CFO and yourselves are, feel free to come up to the office and we'll have that discussion, because I have plenty of notes on it.
I don't have a problem with the 20 grand that they want to spend, 20 grand to find out what's going on. Because I mean, I want to work with him. My thing is, if he spends that money, and if we don't go for it, right, or something else happened and we decide we're going to put Derby and Ansonia together, they're going to be out $20,000, which essentially is going to be us. Right, because it's going to come back to us.
It could be covered by a grant. Right, Joe?
It could, but also, what if you go through and spend $186,000 taxpayer money and it goes to referendum and people don't pass the legislation? They will spend $186,000 in taxpayer money. Which is no back. You have to break a couple legs in economics. I'd rather spend $20,000 and at least have a plan for architects. I can't. We're in a place where I don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, I understand you, but the same thing could happen if it goes out for a referendum on a new school. Right? It could be turned down too, right?
Because that's one of the big pieces. Yes, there was a motion that says to accept and move forward with an application. You can go forward with everything, but if the taxpayers don't want, it's done. It's dead. So it's.
Let me ask, maybe I didn't understand your question and I didn't get a little bit on here. If in fact you do a $20,000 study and you don't do the middle school, but you do the regionalization plan, $20,000 not waste because it's still, you would have needed that feasibility study to add the information to the committee on regionalization.
But we don't get it back though, right?
Well, it would be grant, it would be part of the.
Oh, okay.
It would be, yes. We reach back. So if you're spending dollars to hire an architect, and you're expending dollars that eventually the purpose of that architect, which ordinarily you didn't have a grant application.
I understand what you're saying.
Or a grant commitment, you then use that information to proceed forward, we reach back to those.
I got you.
But, I mean, I'll just throw out there that the Temporary School Regionalization Committee is doing that study already, currently. It's just, it's not going to be done till the end of the year. And that's the last word I heard was is in November.
Those are all reimbursable expenses.
Right, and that's part of the as you mentioned, of the 170,000 that came by way of grant of taxpayer dollars for that particular study, Dr. DeBacco. So, I mean,
Essentially, but if that moves as quickly as, if you look at every other realization effort, it's a multiple-year process.
Oh, yeah.
right, absolutely. But it doesn't mean the information can't be utilized by the Board of Education for that purpose.
Information can't be utilized for the realization, but this is, they're both separate.
But my point is that the contractors in place, they've already been retained, they're already started that process. If the Board of Education deems that it wants to conduct a second feasibility study, I mean, we heard last meeting that they want to spend $20,000 to do a second study. I don't have an issue with that other than.
I just want to say, I think it would be the sake of it. I don't want to come to you in 2 years. The legalization process is still moving, and then I have a leaky roof, and I need a couple $1 million to at least fix the roof, but I have life safety issues. Just for example, new roof at our high school, we're looking at $3 million for a new roof. 20 years and replace. So I'm going to look new roof. I'm going to need a couple $1 million. Like safety things. I mean, if you look at it.
But Joe, what's the cost share? What's the cost share for the residents if you go for a $36 million middle school?
It's going to be like $12 million.
Right. I mean, okay.
Go ahead.
No, because we could also we talk about having putting central office there to sell off where the central office property is, where the middle school property is. If the city could do it, develop it, do whatever they need to. So it's not, we're not ever in a place where we could move central office and our middle school and get the funding that we could get, that was explained to us at the time. But if we could do that, number one, in the future, all we really had to do is also the utilization committee has to really find out, and this is just out there, do they want to regionalize just the high school? Do they want to do the middle school and the high school? Do they want to do elementary school? K to 12? I can only tell you this, most people don't want their little ones going further than anywhere from them. So I think that's what also, not just the kids, but then parents are going to decide, do I want my kid going? Why did I move here when new school is right down the street from me? I live right there. I don't want them going to Bradley or Irving School. I want them right here. So it's something that the committee's going to have to find out and say to themselves, I mean, let's just do it honest. Take a look at the square footage, look at how many classrooms that they have right now. And can you use, to me, it's pretty simple. Look at the square footage that they have in their middle school, their high school, and their elementary school. They're at capacity, we're at capacity. How do you put more kids in a building that's already at capacity, that doesn't have mechanicals? They shut down during, they're the ones with air conditioning during the summertime.
But wasn't
they don't?
Let finish.
But I'm just saying, it's a square foot, 72,000 square feet at their middle school. We have 100,000+ square feet at our old middle school. But to get money for renovation, I'm not speaking for anyone, but they want a minimum of 15 acres. That was recommended.
Yeah, I mean, the statute, if I'm here to discuss what our process is, yeah, there are statutory requirements for the amount of acres they don't need for middle school. And again, you have a regionalization plan. And I understand there's bigger for wanting to build a school and like nobody wants one, needs a, and that kind of school. However, you do have a regionalization plan going forward. They need to meet together somewhere and decide, again, which schools you're going to have and not have, so you need studies.
Do you know how many times our superintendent has been to our regionalization meetings? We started last July. Anyone? None. She hasn't attended. Dr. DeBacco has come to one. Yes, that's correct. I wonder how Governor Lamont would vote on this, if he was part of this. Would he give us George Orwell, 1984 double-speak answer? I don't know, like a political answer, or would he give us a yes or no response to how he would vote on this? I don't know.
I want to let you know, I came to my own just because we also said, be honest and transparent, this should be a neutral process. And
yeah, absolutely.
To go to the Aldermen,
absolutely.
I just wanted to do something and talk about full honesty. We should do something together. What I've heard about when you guys built the high school, I'm going to say it again, it really brought a community together. And I don't want to tell you about a house divided, but we can't stand if we're going to be a house divided. I'm coming to you as a man, not as assistant to you. I don't care, I'm meeting, I attend this. I'm coming to you as we got to do something together. And that's, I was hoping that we could just try to do something. I was looking at this with the chair, we tried doing things with our phone system, it worked out for both of us. You know what? I'm just trying to do something together. If it works out, that's great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I just want to do something with our aldermen so we say we did it together. If we fail together, it doesn't matter. I'd rather just say that it's fine. And it's got to be a step in some direction, trust in some direction, and that's where I'm coming from. That's more of the path. I don't care either way, whatever happens, whatever's good for the kids, I mean, something for me, that's phenomenal. But what I am going to tell you, we got to start somewhere. And I'm trying to start my own. That's why I'm here. That's why I came last time. I contacted a bunch of aldermen, emailed me individually. I'd love to meet. I did meet with Dr. Conway the next day after we met with like this. We showed him things. If he does know what's going on, he didn't meet with the church board. I'm interested they are, but you know what? I'm not the board. I met with the superintendent. I know I met with Dr. Conway, but I was more than happy to meet with any alderman. I think we just got to start somewhere. If it's us putting up money to do something, I don't mind it. I just want to rather try. And lately I haven't. I think the kids should see us trying. The community should see us trying. And it's just me trying. That's all I'm putting out there. I'm not here to say, I'm like day forward. I'm not here about in the past. Where are we going forward from here? And that's kind of why I came to you first. I think if we did it together, right, bad, good, or different, I don't care what you think. But I want you. I don't want to be different. We should be together. That's how we're going to be. You know, if you have a conversation together with me, we're good. Say whatever you want to say.
entitled to it, we're gonna move forward. And that's what I'm looking for, in my own.
Mr. Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm going to say a few things. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names, Costas, I believe, and Dr. DeBacco. If I say anything that's wrong, please stop me. But what I've been hearing so far is the Board of Education is willing to pony up to $20,000, which could very easily, in the full run of it, be reimbursable from the state of Connecticut. There's also, I heard, $8,500 in state money that would be helped with a study. All right. Dr. DeBacco was told about both the middle school property as it stands right now. That property can be sold, the money remitted to the city of Ansonia. Also where your superintendent's building is and the portable behind it. I'm sure the cemetery there would snap that property up in a minute. That could be sold with benefit to the city of Ansonia. Costas, I believe you were saying basically in my terms that this new middle school building would be custom-made, tailor-made for regionalization. There's a lot of variance. You can add another floor onto the top of the building that would accommodate both Derby and Ansonia Middle School. Tailor-made for regionalization. I believe these comments about the portables and our superintendent of schools that is retiring already are not germane to this conversation. I think this conversation should be about the middle school itself, stand on its merits, not be distracted by portables or a superintendent of schools that is retiring. I just don't want to see the city of Ansonia waste a year of planning process that will basically cost nothing, and there is no obligation. No cost, no obligation to start this tonight. And then if we don't want to do it, we don't do it at no cost, no obligation. And the Board of Education has ways to recoup the $20,000 through grants and other state vehicles. To me, this is a no-brainer. No cost, no obligation. What does it do to hurt to study it? And let the Board of Ed study it.
Mr. Rivers.
I don't have a problem with that, but the last time it came before us, it was not presented that way.
So maybe I didn't speak properly. Maybe I didn't use. I didn't use the right words. That was my bad. My apology. But I think, we understand the premise of this, and Costas is here tonight. I think he's put a lot of meat on the bones, and Joe DeBacco has added some more details. So
yes, he did. He did, and I don't have a problem.
Yeah. No cost, no obligation. I mean,
yeah, I don't have a problem.
I don't understand the problem.
Mr. King.
I don't think there is any problem with doing the study. Again, it was tabled and put forward this month because of the language in the original request. The study, nobody here was opposed to. I don't believe anybody's voted against doing the study.
No.
I think it's a great idea. If it needs to be done, let's move along and get going. The language in the request that we put before the Board of Aldermen asks for us to relinquish the power of accepting or refusing funding and grants, but which would put the city on the hook and puts us on a path if we're legally obligated to follow, which is going to cost us money. That decision stays with this board. We're not going to give that up. So, I would propose if they want to do the study, the city side, we'll do $10,000. The school board does $10,000. Let's do this. Let's do the study. Let's move on with it. Not with that language.
Mr. Marini?
So I don't want to see both sides talk in circles. I think it looks like there's a consensus, and I would actually recommend the City Council a study sooner than later, because the idea of understanding what needs to be done really can't wait on any other considerations. I'm right with you guys there in terms of recommending that. I think we need to clarify what the request is. From what we understand, and we've also reached out to Costas earlier in this meeting, there are separate considerations entirely, which I think everybody gets right now. The application is separate from the study. They could link up, because if you do the study and you proceed with the application, you could get reimbursed for it. So my questions / concerns would be, on the feasibility study, it looks like the Board of Ed would not need any approval from the Board of Aldermen to do that, because it's not the application. There was a request for funding, $20,000, which could be provided from the city to the Board of Education. And there was an alternate plan that maybe the Board of Education could possibly use a grant to cover it or its own funds. My only issue with the city providing the funds would be the MBR. which is our classic concern. If we do provide 20,000 to the Board of Ed, my understanding is the commission will deem any funds that go to the Board of Ed to count towards that MDR. The other consideration I would have longer term, not passing that issue, is that if there's truly a regionalization potential, I would hope, and I know what's realistic and what's not realistic, it's hard to say, but it would be difficult to stomach that we could be setting the table for regionalization with the residents of Ansonia paying 100% of the cost, going to bond all of the $12 million, and regionalization later on could happen. It would be wonderful, and again, I don't know if it's realistic. I think it depends on the willpower of both communities to come together, if we could have this be sort of a joint thing from the beginning, because that could pave the way for not only sharing of a feasibility study, which is minor in nature, but possibly for a sharing of the building cost, which would be monumental. Again, there's time considerations, so what's great in a perfect world may not be realistic here. But to go right to the feasibility study, unless I'm wrong, it looks like the Board of Ed could do that without any further action from this board. It's then just a question of funding.
Mr. President? Wait, Mr. Stoll is first.
I can't comprehend how, gentlemen, I cannot comprehend why you wouldn't fit, you have a regionalization study in place. Mr. Yaman, is that right?
Well, we have a study committee in place.
In place, that you're moving, and the state is going to assist with this, is that right?
Well, it's been ongoing since July.
Now, why wouldn't we let that go to its fruition and then take the $20,000 with the study and move forward? Because I don't know what, because I'm not on that commission or committee, but it seems to me that they are doing the research of what buildings are eligible or not eligible, and the state is saying that they're going to force this. What was it? How many thousands of people, any less than a certain number, is going to be
50.
Right, is going to be forced to regionalize. So why can't we let this process? Because you're not going to get ahead of us with this. There's no way. I don't see how you could possibly take the $20,000, invest it, and then all of a sudden come here and say you're ahead of us when we were already working on it.
They're not trying to do that, Charlie.
No, I'm not. It's not in a negative way. I'm just, how does that happen? So they're already underway with the state. Why wouldn't we let that finish and then take the $20,000? Now that we're more educated of what we're possibly going to do and with who, then we process this next $20,000. Why? I don't understand.
We don't have to give the time.
Yeah, right. Mr. President,
Mr. Murray.
I just want to, there is a point there in that there's some unknowns. Will the regionalization effort turn out mutually agreeable, where both towns say, yes, it's something we want to do? Will the state step in and say, it's something you have to do? Or a third option, will this just end, right, at loggerheads? No one's forced to do it, no one wants to do it, and in that case, no one's obligated to do it. And that is the worry, and I do understand that. What if all this time passes and nothing was even studied? Now, if you have a building that is basically an expired building, now you are hurting the children in that building. So there needs to be a way to address all these considerations. There's a great potential here for regionalization. They can share the costs, they can bring the communities together, but it's not, it's a challenge, right? And at the same time, you have to balance that by being able to continue on a path to at least be ready if the worst happens and it doesn't work. So this isn't an easy, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of question.
Certainly.
Mr. Tripp, then Mr. Yaman.
I'll make my comments quick, Mr. President. I recommend, I request that the city not provide $20,000 to the Board of Education. I want to take that off the table right away, and the Board of Education is actually in agreement with that. They'll find a grant or something to make up the difference. If I heard correctly from Costas, the reimbursement from the state can be up to 95%. Please tell me if I'm repeating that wrong, Costas. Up to 95%.
Of a regionalization plan.
Right. So, and we're only agreeing to planning. We're not even, turn the first shovel or applying for the loan or grant or whatever it is. All right? So This has to come back to this Board of Aldermen. It has to be a grant requested or a loan requested, whatever the next step is. This is only planning. And the Board of Education is going to pay for it out of pocket or with a grant. And if regionalization does happen, if things do segue, amazingly, if things do come together, the blocker gets in front of the running back, reimbursement from the state of Connecticut for regionalization will be 95%. This is a win-win for the city of Ansonia and regionalization.
I just don't add too much to the idea of studies and so on and so forth. The idea is to extract information. If you're doing a feasibility study, I'm not sure if it's an existing condition study, which is different from a feasibility study, because we want to know that the inside, the skin of the building, all the mechanics, all walk through. If you've got hazardous materials, I'm not sure what.
It's my understanding it's feasibility on all buildings.
Then, as opposed to existing conditions.
Yeah.
So that'll be important. With respect to the question brought up by council as to maybe a 50-50, that's one of the discussions that usually occurs with the committee that's established and part of the referendum questions that eventually are going to come out as to how much of the building should Ansonia pay 100% of the cost for Derby to, for instance, after it be part of regionalization. I don't think anybody assumes that. I think that shouldn't be the case. That needs to be worked out, which is why you determine if, in fact, you use a Derby school that was refurbished in 2007, that they're still paying bonds on, right? Would Ansonia have to pay them for whatever's left on that? They would probably say yes. And a reasonable person would conclude, yeah, you would. So those type of things need to be worked out in all of those regionalization plans, and they have. This is not the first time, right? There are regions that have existed, that continue to exist. There are regions who voluntarily got together, determined who's going to have the superintendent, who wasn't going to have the superintendent, and then which boards, how many boards, and all of the fancy stuff that goes along with it, right? And that takes time and circumstances. How you massage it all and put it together, all that information is needed, and ultimately, all the buildings are going to be required. You have an added problem in the sense that you have an aging building that is currently housing students that, according to your consultants that you've hired, that you have, are suggesting it's got a 2-year life. So if that's the case, what are you going to do in 2 years? So that's the other question, and I don't have the answer because, A, I'm not here long enough, and I don't need to give me a course.
Mr. Yalman.
I just want to say, I understand that time is of the essence, Dr. Davaco, so I get what the conversation is about. I agree with you that there should be more conversations about this. These things that are in my mind, and I agree with Mr. Tripp that this is a no-brainer. Have the feasibility study, go forward with it. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes back if that's what the Board of Education chooses to do. I would point out, I believe it's the same contractor that just did this study. The existing condition study, the same professionals that did that, I believe, are the same professionals being used by the temporary regional school study committee. So the exchange of information and the flow is probably very easy in that regard. They're also doing the same study for feasibility with Derby. What my suggestion was, on a completely separate track than the temporary regional school study committee, would be to engage Derby, like you said you did with Dr. Conway, and start having those conversations about what we can do in the alternative. Because there's nothing that says that whether it's feasible for regionalization or not, we can't make another agreement with Derby with regards to the middle school facilities until such things are worked out. So that would be what I would suggest at this point in time. Let's get the feasibility study working. Get that on board and have a...
We did a feasibility. You guys have a copy of our feasibility and demographic study that we gave to district management. So we've done, we had, I'm asking for more the next condition.
The existing condition study is different from the feasibility study. Because what we recommended. The idea was, if you were going to proceed, I didn't know, and it's not our place to tell you how to proceed. If Derby and Ansonia could have a discussion of buildings and the existing conditions of those buildings, and a quick decision was made by virtue of the regionalization committee in conjunction with the Aldermen of Derby and Ansonia, it says, you know what, of all the middle schools, the middle school should be the one in Ansonia. So if that's the case, then you proceed along those lines, knowing that you're going to build a school to be a regional middle school. And if you're not going to do that, and it's going to rest in Derby, then you know that Derby's got to take action on its school so that it can accommodate your middle school students in its building, because as it currently sits, it does not. So somebody's got to make those kinds of movements in that regional company. Because that's the immediate thing, is your middle school.
Mr. President,
Mr.
can
Short
I make a
was,
motion?
Charlie, Mr. Short was next.
Just a question.
I'm sorry.
The existing conditions, that was the one you said you reimbursed like $8,500 or something like that? Is that the cost of it, or that's how much you pay?
No, that should be the cap.
Okay. Does that
Of
include,
existing conditions that are building.
does that include existing conditions of all the schools and like the administration buildings?
Correct.
Like central office and everything? Are those buildings that they were planning on getting out of would be included in that as well?
The idea is that you can move, and we encourage boards of education to move in school buildings if they have them already, and rather than reimburse them at 50% of the cost on an administration building, we reimburse them at 100% of whatever your reimbursement rate is, since you're moving into a school, and we're encouraging you to shrink down your space and save costs on facilities, save costs on overhead, reduce costs for taxpayers all around. So we're encouraging that as well. But if it's going to be a building you're abandoning, there's no sense in spending $500,000.
And so the example given then was selling, like say, selling off 2 buildings as you move. Would that be included as part of that study as well, like the value back on that? Or?
No, we don't get involved in the marketing.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion where, as the Board of Ed goes speak with Derby about what they're planning, and we go and check our feet. Joe, you can talk to somebody that's working on the feasibility project with you and bounce off what their ideas are and see what they give us a suggestion to do, and then table this for now, and then have enough further discussion hopefully next Aldermen meeting.
I'd be happy to reach out to the contractors that are doing the regionalization study committee. I'm sure Dr.
So you'll second this motion? You'll second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, I want to know what the wording is on this, because to me it's very vague. This is another table. Can you explain to me, Joe?
My understanding is that...
Joe, she's going to read it.
I think what you're trying to say is that you're moving that the Board of Education speak with Derby about their plan, their buildings.
You want to know if Derby is doing the existing condition study as well, right?
That's it.
It doesn't basically kind of boil down to that?
I don't think it's an existing condition study. I think it's a feasibility
You
study.
think it's not?
Two things are being confused here,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah,
So,
what is-
we got two
They
things
want,
being confused
Dr.
here.
Joe, you want the existing condition study.
We've already done feasibility.
We've already? Yep.
So,
Right.
I would just say at this point, we'll meet with Derby anyway. We don't have to make a decision for us to meet with Derby and Dr. Conway.
Joe, what study needs to be done?
We're going to be at special, because we're going to get, I just want to do it together. That's why I.
Oh, they are $20,000? How many?
It's
They're gonna pay for it.
$8,500. They gave us a rough estimate, 85 plus $8,500.
Can I ask you a question? Your intent basically was to come in here tonight and just work together with us, not ask
What do
for
you mean,
money,
the work-
not
what does
argue
that-
back
Motion
and forth.
on the floor
What
hasn't
does
been
that mean
seconded.
together? What does
It's
that
called
mean?
discussion.
Mr. Stowe,
You got to second
No,
it
it
before
was.
you can have
It
the
was.
Wait,
discussion.
Mr. Stowe, can you
That's why
clarify the
the
motion,
feasibility
please?
study already, yeah.
Can you restate the motion?
What I'd like to see is the Board of Ed with the state, with your state, what is his title? The fellow that just...
Costas.
Mr. Costas, what's his title?
The director of
Grant.
Grant School Construction.
For the Department of Administrative Services, not the Department of Ed. Department of
I'm going to withdraw
Administrative
myself.
Services.
I'm going to take Dr. DeBacco at his word that he's going to meet with Dr. Conway anyway. He's trying to facilitate a conversation to conduct the study.
Right.
I look forward to you guys doing the study. I want to have the conversation.
Right.
I would look forward to meeting with you, Dr. DeBacco, with regards to the temporary regionalization school study committee. If you want to have further conversations, I'd be more than happy to get involved.
Mr. Stowe, would you withdraw, excuse me,
Motion, please.
hold on. Mr. Stowe, would you withdraw your motion?
There's no second.
I'm withdrawing my second.
You're rewording it. Or you're just figuring they're gonna go do it and they're gonna come back.
He's given us where he said it, he's gonna go meet with.
So we're gonna table this and so we're gonna table this and
I don't think we need to table it. I think,
we don't need to
I
table
think the conversation is about giving our blessing to do the study that they're talking about in terms of the existing conditions study and trying to work together. I'd like to see the conversation exist with Derby. They do the same sort of study, so we can look at both middle schools at the same time. That's what I would like to see. That's what I'm hoping. Dr. DeBacco is going to have that conversation with Dr. Conway about making that study and putting it forward together, trying to do those two things together.
And in the
We're
meantime,
talking about
they have the ability to do their own, which keeps the ball moving. But I think by doing it together, we realize that this board really wants to see Derby join the process, so we can look at everything, right? So all the cards are on the table.
Joe, can you put that in the motion, please? Word it.
Sure. I guess it would be my motion. My motion would be to work
I'll
with
second it.
to work with Dr. DeBacco.
I tried getting that done when we first started.
And assisting him in any way the Board of Aldermen can to work with, not only reach out to Derby, but to help support their efforts for an existing conditions study on the Ansonia Middle School and to work with their counterparts in Derby for an existing conditions study in Derby.
Second. Discussion, I know. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, Charlie?
Motion carried.
I just saved you guys 45 minutes arguing. You'd have just kept going.
Executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second by Mr. Cassetti. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Executive session.
Hey, life support up here. We didn't tell them, right?
Dinner.